Okay, welcome to the finance meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order. 6 o'clock. And let's see. Paul, Terry, Chris, Sarah, John, Andrea, Lisa. Anybody else that I miss? Who's it?
You missed the introduction. Sorry.
Oh, this introduction. Spalding Assistant Principal Mary Miller is looking to come and join us.
I'm Mary. Met you. Did you come and spend some time in school one day? I'm not yet. I don't know. I've been to all of them, I think, but I can't remember. I've met so many people. But hey, it's nice to meet you and welcome.
You're to be a fly on the wall, but also if any Spalding stuff comes in,
Thank you, Sarah.
you're welcome to jump in.
Okay. All right. First order of business. Any additions or changes to the current agenda? Can I get a motion to accept the agenda with any additions or changes?
So moved. Second, okay, ladies first. Right.
Terry,
Just because I can be louder than you.
Terry
No.
and Sarah, did you get that, Andrea?
Yeah, I thought I heard Paul chime in before Sarah, but I'll make it Sarah.
Okay.
I deferred.
Any discussion? Okay, I would like to make a small change. For 6.1 fiscal year 24 budget and schedule, I would like to take and discuss the review schedule first. And then the next item on in this whole packet is then to review the narrative pages and then do the draft line by line items. Is that okay?
You want to take them out of order?
Just figure.
Take them out of order. I mean, they're not, I mean, it's 6.1. It's the budget and the schedule together. So I don't know how you want to handle that, Andrea.
We're just gonna say that we're taking items out of order, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Everybody okay with that?
Cheers for Andrew.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Okay, any community members from the public want to speak? Okay, so I need a motion to approve the meeting minutes from August 9th.
So moved.
September 15th.
Excuse me. I got August 9th on here, that's why I said it. So
Medication.
good catch, Sarah, thank you. I didn't change my date on
I
my
thought
sheet.
Paul was going to mess me up with his dates.
Okay,
So moved.
okay, so that was Paul and Sarah. Any
So you're the
discussions?
second.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Sure.
Any discussions, changes, edits? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. All right, number 5. I have no new business. Is there any new business anybody wants to? Okay.
Here's Michelle.
Well, there's
Oh, this Michelle. Hi, Michelle.
Oh, can you hear me? Hi.
I can hear you. Welcome.
Crystal clear.
We've started. I don't know if you've got the agenda in front of you, but we're on number 6.
Okay.
Old business 6.1. Okay, so I want to start with the draft meeting schedule. So November 2nd, it says date change for finance meeting. I would like that to read additional finance meeting to prepare for the expense budget we go to the board November 10th. Because I still want to have the November 17th finance meeting on the schedule.
May I make a suggestion or a recommendation too? Lisa and I were talking about this earlier related to that.
Mhm.
With that, just for the committee to consider, one of the things we talked about last time, I believe, was using the first December board meeting for a community listening session on the budget. That's December 8th.
Yeah, that was my next thing.
Right. So what we would like to recommend is that the community listening session, we instead we're a little worried that that's a little late to get the whole community involved in this discussion, and thinking that it would make sense to move that session to the November 17 date of Thursday. That could be part of the finance meeting as opposed to the board meeting, and then have a regular board meeting on the 8th. Just want to throw that out for discussion. It's something Lisa and I talked about today. We thought it could be very helpful. We could then have Josh Allen join us for part of the November 2 meeting to talk about strategy and how we want to get that out there. Not in addition to having an in-person option for that, also thinking about ways to reach out to the whole community. So we can really have some good info from the whole community to digest, maybe over Thanksgiving break for that December 8th meeting. It just feels a little late. Just want to throw that out if we wait until December 8th. Want to throw that out.
How well is that? How well attended is that listening session?
Well, it really depends how we promote it. Last year, I can't remember if you were there,
Last year
Paul.
there was
It was a good,
60 people.
yeah,
60?
it was
Yeah.
a good, well, combination of virtual and we could do it. And again, I don't want to steal
I was just
Josh's
gonna
thunder.
ask you, where's the venue gonna be? Are you
It
gonna
could be in the auditorium
Okay.
right here, and we could set it up with a screen so people could jump in virtually.
Okay.
We're looking at this new communication system that we're putting in place to reach out to the whole community that could actually do some real quick survey work that we could work on as a community to get ask community questions. I don't know. It's just something that we were talking about, looking at this calendar. It might be really effective and invite the community into this a little bit earlier.
If you line the tables here, there's plenty of room for large charting.
You could do it in here too.
I'm thinking about the acoustics in the auditorium.
Can
They're
be,
tough.
yep.
I've done it before and it sucks.
So what does
Agreed.
everybody have their thoughts on that?
I think that might be a good idea with the holidays coming up, and knowing that we're gonna at least probably cancel at least one meeting, like our regular board meeting. I think that might be a good idea to get the community input earlier and gives us as a finance committee more time to,
Well, that's what I was thinking was that I'm wondering, I mean, so we're meeting tonight and we're gonna go over, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to me. I mean, this is all new to me, so it's learning, so I'm gonna ask a lot of questions, but so I'm wondering if, and then we meet November 2nd, is in your expertise, is that going to give us enough time to get the answers that we need and to really go through this and make sure that we're gonna be prepared to meet with the community?
I mean, I think, I mean, we'll have the information that we have. We might need to, we can certainly share with the committee information as we get it before the meetings. We can share it by email with the whole crew, so people can see it. Again, I mean, I think it will, and I think if we use November, and I welcome Lisa to pipe in on this, but I think if we look at that November 2 as sort of take some of it as a planning session to engage the community too with the information that we do have, because November 2 is 2 weeks away.
Well, that's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking, because
Right.
we got tonight and then,
Right.
preparing, leaving enough time for you guys to get whatever questions, I don't know what they've got for questions, but whatever questions everybody has. And make sure that we're going to be able to, provide answers to the community. on
Maybe that's
everything.
something we could talk about too, Lisa, is just how the best avenue for getting those questions to you and me. So that,
Right.
that could be a piece that could help this process.
And that's another thing that we've been talking about. When this was sent out, people have had, individual committee members have had questions. And so it might be helpful for us to put all these questions in one place. That way, Nancy's asking questions and maybe Terry had the same question, but he didn't, ask. So I just think it's a way for us to have a resource, a Q&A, and that it's all in one place. It's also helpful for me and Chris to have some time to, put the answers in writing, because, I don't necessarily have all the answers, or what might not have all the answers for you tonight.
And we can consult with the admin teams too.
So I have a
Absolutely.
concern. I have a concern. And this is a concern I invented about 5-6 weeks ago when we had a meeting. And my concern was that we were going to get information getting closer and closer to target dates. There's going to be a lot of information to go over with. We're talking about less than 3 weeks now to plow through this, and there's probably going to be a ton of questions dealing with this. The interchange responses and not having a lot of meetings to really hammer through this in order to make a proper presentation to the board. I mean, this is precursory at this point. We're looking at a lot of numbers, and there's a lot of stuff that some of us have already started going through. And I'll admit, I've done this for a lot of years, so I'm used to, especially this format, I'm very used to it. But you also learn an awful lot out of that. And if we only have 1 or 2 meetings and that's it from a finance committee, I don't think that really serves the board or the community well if we can't get responses in an immediate way to this. And there has to be a discussion that goes on. It has to be interactive.
So are we still planning on presenting? So,
We still have the community piece too. That's going to be
well,
part of that.
because right now they've got us down, Lisa's got us down to present to the board on November 10th. So if we meet November 2nd, you're saying that we're going to be pretty well put together here with this budget to present it to the board.
Yeah, the first pass at it, right, Lisa?
Right. So November, is it November 10th would be the first expense budget draft 1 to the board.
Okay. All right.
We also present them again, like in December and then in January too.
Understood.
So it's not
So,
final,
yeah,
obviously.
I
Right.
think last year we did like draft 4, draft 5, so.
Right. In my mind, I'm thinking when you want to do and get as much as you possibly can on that first sweep, and then make sure everything is good, and then allow for questions and answers, and then whatever changes you need. So,
We'll know after tonight's meeting.
well, that's
Where
what
we're
I'm
headed.
thinking, and we'll just, on November 2nd, I think maybe we can make a decision at that point, to see where we're at.
Yeah.
And then, if you want to use November 17th as the community, session for, interaction with questions about the budget, we can certainly put that on there.
I was thinking that to do it before Thanksgiving would be helpful to the board, honestly helpful to the administrative team too, as we get into draft 2, 3, and however many we do, just to really hear from folks on the early side.
And then that's what we do is like 3, 4. Wow, that's scary.
It can
Well,
happen.
I'm thinking-
Tweaks happen.
Things happen.
So the December 8th possible board listening session would be moved up to the 17th of November.
Right, and December 8 would be a regular
Board
would be a
meeting,
regular meeting.
especially since our second December meeting is like on a vacation day.
That's the dilemma. Our second November and December board meetings are currently on vacation days. Thanksgiving's a no-brainer, but the
We're on vacation day.
22nd of December, I
Yeah.
for one could be here. I just can't ask anybody else. So that's something you guys can discuss as a full board, but
Well, I'm wondering why we would not be able to, I know the kids are out of school, but why would you not want? I mean, you still don't have meetings when schools are closed.
well, it's vacation, so
Yeah,
there'll be,
Understood.
so like most people will be off. It could be
That's
travel
right.
time, it could be all kinds of stuff. As I
Okay.
said, I know for sure I will be.
I
here.
got it.
I will be here, so we could have a meeting, but just like,
Okay.
just to keep all that, just the way the calendar works. Yeah.
Because they have vacation plans. So I'm
They could.
thinking, when the kids had vacation, I still had to work, so. Okay, so December 8th is going back to the board, just a board meeting at this point, and possibly November 17th. Andrea, are you getting this? So November 2nd is an additional,
Yep, here's what I have. I have November 2nd, we can just change the schedule, say it's an additional finance committee meeting. And then 11/17/22 is gonna be like a regular finance committee meeting, including or having a public listening session.
Yes, and that's
And,
with a
yeah.
question mark, so, yeah, we'll better know on November 2nd, yes, and then December 8th is going back to being a regular board.
Regular
meeting.
board meeting, yep.
Mhm.
Just to throw something out there, food for thought. Sometimes what the board's done in the past is if they feel, especially around budget time, that they need 2 board meetings in the month, they switch the board meetings from the 2nd and 4th Thursdays to the 1st and 3rd and just reschedule the committees that normally meet on those Thursdays to be the Wednesday, or, they just kind of move the committees. Well, it's just
And
a
that might
thought.
be a bad idea.
Right.
Because that gets a little bit more upfront. More time.
So potentially the 1st and the 15th. For you guys, would that be discussed next week at the board meeting with everybody?
We can.
I make note of it.
Well, I guess the big thing, Lisa, I'll just say, the risk of speaking for you, Lisa, I appreciate you guys being open to that listening session thing. We think it would be prudent to have the whole community have an opportunity before Thanksgiving.
Oh, I think it's a great idea, and get the information out to the community sooner rather than later, so we're not crunching.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we hear from the entire community, and really get the word out so that there's lots of representation from everybody.
That's where Josh can come in and help us.
Understood, okay. Any other questions, comments?
I think if Elcor listens to this meeting tonight, he'll get out there.
Right.
I guess, Sonia, for the record, the doodle poll that I filled out earlier, November 2nd doesn't work.
All right, yeah.
I didn't even put the 2 together.
I sent her an email letting her know that was November 2nd, because I saw you accepted it, and so did Terry.
I just did them all.
I know you did.
I will change it. I'll update that. Thank you.
Sonia, I'm flexible to any date you choose.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay, any other discussion on the schedule? Okay. All right, we're moving on. All right, so we're going to go to the narrative. Okay, so we got this packet, fiscal year 24 budget development. I see that there is the comments of our board values and goals that we have talked about at a couple of board meetings, and what we were kind of hoping to do. I'm just going to make a comment on a few. Alice isn't here. I wanted her to kind of explain a little bit more on that. Terry, I think what was it, the comment you said? You were looking for?
This is kind of all in the middle of the 3rd bullet point there.
Okay. Do you want to read what you said?
A flat or reduced budget for FY24, discussion of unfilled positions, efficiency in purchasing and standardized purchasing, use of surplus funds to offset expenses or increases in the budget to complete large necessary projects, or used to expand the C building program. I think that was it for me.
Okay. And then, wanted to be able to have the administrators to look for areas they could be cost conscious. I thought maybe we could be as level funded as possible, but understanding we probably won't be. But one of my questions is going to be is, when you're in this budget process, do you look for areas of savings, of keeping things down? Okay. And also, Terry, I see you've got on here, receive input from administrators regarding their values, goals, and priorities. Is that something that we would be able to
just for historical purposes, it's kind of like what Lisa does with the narrative, that this is the stuff that she's getting from the administrators in each of the buildings that they believe they need. So I
The
think
stuff in here was submitted and worked on by
Okay,
administrators.
so these were from the administrators. So all this information, okay, so this is the process that I was kind of interested in, how this is, okay.
Right,
So
so
the-
when we go to the administrators and the directors, they're sharing what they feel are the resources they need in their buildings or in their departments to, you know, serve the students and the community and the staff.
Okay. All right. So I see that you guys are asking for, it looks like an increase of 4 million,
Is
51 million, because we're at. And does
I
that,
believe the draft one number is right now at 9.1.
51.6.
okay,
51.6?
Yep.
That number's changed. When we got-
51.5. She just rounded it up.
You round up.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
She's rounding over here. She
That's
doesn't do
okay.
military time and she's rounding her figures.
you didn't round correctly.
Oh, I would hope so.
Yeah, 51.56. Okay.
Yeah, I think you did.
So I have a question. Does this include the 6 million?
No. So what we're working on right now is our general fund. The 6 million is the grants, the grant funds.
Okay.
So it doesn't include the grant funds. And the 80% of the increase is salary and benefits, salary, wages, and benefits.
What was that percentage again? 80?
In addition, there's an increase in expenses in Spalding because of the shift from CVCC sharing 18% of all of those expenses for the library, the health office, and facilities. There was also a shared cost with the debt. So now that CVCC is their own independent, we are taking on all of the expenses. However, there's some offsetting revenue from the lease and the other contracted services. So the overall offsetting revenues that we'll receive back are just over $400,000.
So the loss of revenue because of this is 400,000, but the income is 400,000. Is it a wash or not?
It's for the most part, it's a wash. Yes.
So the expenses are higher, but the revenues will have to be higher.
That's what I meant.
Correct. If that makes up part of that 9%
Yes.
increase.
Okay. All right, well, let's, I'd like to start on the next page, district-wide considerations,
Yes.
salary and wage increases. There have been significant transitions in staffing and variances over the past 3 years. Based on these actuals, we've made adjustments, wages, benefit, plan options. Okay. Anybody have questions on that?
Yeah, I have a question. It's a delicate question because we haven't really gotten there yet. So you're projecting a certain salary percentage and the health will be the other thing we can talk about in a minute. What is the projectional number that you've incorporated for the purposes of draft one?
We've made an assumption of a 3 to 5% increase.
That's the projection.
And again, you know that we have a paraeducator contract as well as the teacher's contract that we will be negotiating soon. So we're just making assumptions at this point.
So you're using the same numbers for the pairs?
I use 3% for teachers and 5% for paraeducators.
Okay, I didn't understand that way, right? Okay, thank you.
So have you, with this, the salary breakage report that you were going to provide, I believe, in November, would that kind of give us a snapshot of looking, showing what you're telling us here?
No, the salary breakage was the current year budget to actual, which I did share with you.
Yeah, okay. All right. All right, and benefit plan. Health insurance premiums increase 13%. Official increase to announce, okay. So that's unofficial?
That's unofficial at this point. They, VHI has submitted their proposed increases. And as of Friday, last Friday at the VASBO meeting, they felt 13% was safe. It could potentially be, 11 or 12, but at this point, we're going with 13.
Okay, and last year it was what?
6%.
6%, so it's
Yes.
almost doubled.
Yes.
Double. Okay, and what does that figure look like?
In terms of a dollar value,
Yes.
$500,000
Is that $500,000 total? Is that $500,000 increase?
increase.
I don't know.
And that includes the dental as well?
No,
It doesn't.
That's an extra.
Extra, the dental is extra, okay. What would the price tag be, or the dollar amount for the dental? What was
I'm
the,
not quite sure. I can, these are like questions I'd like to really dig into further. But those are great questions.
okay,
Question for Chris, if I could.
yes,
So health insurance, so looks like, all the savings from last year is gone. That was one of our funding sources for the salary metric. So what's our plan going forward if that's no longer, if
Well,
there's
that
no
was
more savings there
It was a funding source for FY 23.
for year one? Okay.
Right, but
Okay.
that wasn't what we're thinking of for next year.
Okay. So the plan would be we'd absorb that into the budget.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
That would be the,
Yeah. Okay.
yes, exactly.
Yeah. Not counting on those savings. Okay.
Lisa, when will we have a final from the insurance, PI on, for the purpose of our budget? Will we have it by January?
Mid-November. Oh, yes, we'll definitely have. Typically, the insurance premiums, those decisions are made by the end of November.
Okay,
Yes.
you wouldn't see that going any higher.
No.
Lisa, this is John Lyons. Question, the salary and wage increases and the benefits, do you calculate the total compensation package and what the increase is year over year?
I
'Cause I understand the difference when you break this out, but I also look at what the total compensation package is, and I find that very interesting, especially when folks are looking for more money.
During negotiations, we typically will look at total wages. In addition, the total health insurance premium cost. So we do that during negotiations.
Okay, so every employee will know what the total compensation benefit is to them, not just wages and salary, but also benefits.
right.
We
does
don't
each-
currently share that information with people unless, on their pay stub, oftentimes they can see where, they have a employer contribution. but we don't share it with them.
I think though, I think that would be very interesting that people would know what that is, because we're talking about, especially in the times we're living in,
Exactly.
these strike me as big numbers.
They
And I
are.
look at, and I look at the total compensation.
Mhm.
It's what I've always done, so that when I sit down with folks and they want to know, what am I getting? It's not just, okay, here's your salary, but also here's your benefits and what is being paid for you. And I think that that's very important, that folks understand that whole dynamic.
Right, because it's not just your paycheck, it's the
Right.
benefits that go with it, like the tuition
Right.
and everything that
So,
is being paid for, or even
If I-
the go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No,
And if I may, Lisa, when you explain it, it's also about what someone else pays for you. Yes, you as the beneficiary of this is what you contribute, but what's being contributed for you?
yes.
And I don't think we give that enough value.
Could I make a quick statement?
Oh, wait,
Oh,
let's say.
sorry, Lisa.
So I think that's very important too, because you got your HRA, your HSA accounts, and there's money being contributed on your behalf. And to me, it's important that employee know exactly, okay, you're hired, this is your pay rate, this is your health benefit that's being paid, this is your HRA contribution or your HSA. This is all, because it's not just that one salary. Chris, go ahead.
I was just going to say, for comparative purposes, districts don't tabulate or report wages that way, just so you know. So if we're doing comps compared to Washington Central, Montpelier, or anywhere else, that isn't how it's how they're compared. Just as an FYI. And currently, to John's point, we don't have that figure on our contracts, like, the benefits. But as Lisa said, it is duly noted in all the pay stubs and all that. But I don't know if you
I
have
also
anything
want
else.
to point out that the health it's universal. All the teachers in the state are on the same health contract.
That's
So
fine.
it's the same
I
here
understand,
as it
but
might be at
what
another
is the,
school.
what is their individual benefit
Right.
is what I want to point out, because it's a total compensation package. You can't be at the high range of everything. You can't afford it.
Right, exactly.
And I think a discussion about folks understanding what the total compensation package encompasses is important, is my opinion.
If I could interject, I know where Sarah's coming in, and she has a very valid point. 3 years ago, we, by legislative fiat, if you will, we moved to a statewide contract in which everything got negotiated by a team of players. That didn't fare well for Barry. What happened is we wound up with a $2.4 million increase in our expense budgets as a result of that. It was an interesting budget to try to sell.
3 years ago.
3 years ago.
3
I
years
guess
ago,
three,
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I remember leading that wonderful exercise.
Right.
So right now, and I think I've got this pretty right for what you're saying, is that it's really taken out of our hands, so it really doesn't really matter what that is. That's really a statewide thing that's negotiated.
Yeah, but it's still money in.
Yeah, I know,
Okay,
but-
it's still,
but we-
that's
but-
what John's getting at. Is
Yeah,
it still
John's
money?
correct, but we have no control over it. That's
We're
the
not
problem.
saying that we do, but
But you
it's,
want to look at the matrix of it, right?
Right.
but as an
Yeah.
employee, when
Thank you.
somebody looks at their
Okay.
salary.
I'm trying to get the two. I know you
Yeah.
were talking two different points of view, but I understand both.
Yeah.
Value.
I think where I was
And we're
getting at
talking
is
about,
if.
and we're
sorry.
talking about the public, I think folks need to understand what the total compensation package is to folks.
Right, because I know when I worked, my previous employer, when I worked, I made that, there was a lot of other things that were involved in that. And at the end of the day, that bottom line was my true
Yeah.
salary.
That
So
was done by a
irregardless
company.
of whether it's a
State doesn't
universal
price it.
healthcare, that's still a benefit,
Yeah.
every benefit.
Point taken.
I guess the only thing I would just add to that is that it might be nice to know the numbers, but at the end of the day, it won't make a tinker's damn because we will have no control over that aspect. And
Well,
that's reality.
And
Well,
if other districts aren't reporting that way, then you can't really compare Like if somebody were to shop their teacher's contract, they couldn't compare like what we're providing to them versus, because when you back out the benefits, it just comes down to wages.
I agree with that, but as an employee, I'd like to know exactly what my total compensation is.
Yeah.
And whether I compare it with some other employer or not, this is my worth, and this is what I'm making. And, I think,
The public won't know that aspect unless you
No.
combine the whole total. But
Right.
the
but
employee
it's
should
good
know it
that
off
the
their pay
employee,
stub.
exactly, you know.
Okay.
Can I
think
just-
we'll get
Could I just get back to, so when we're working our way through this narrative, some questions are coming up. I think it would be helpful, and if I could go back to what I said before, where maybe a Q&A would be helpful. So if, as we're working through this, and you think of questions that you think might be helpful for our community to have the answers to, or if, you know, there's things that we want to just keep in mind, I'll jot them down so that we have a place that we can actually have, you know, it feels like it might be more productive to actually tell me what your questions are, and then we can get the answers to them.
You just answered several, so they came pretty quick.
Okay,
I think we're out of the health.
all right, so are we all settled the health thing?
I am.
Okay,
Yeah.
John, were
Yeah,
you?
no, I'm
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Facilities, fixed cost, construction lines increase. This is kind of out of my area, but I see that you guys are increasing your construction lines from 75 cents a square foot to $1. Do we have the square footage for each building?
I have it.
Okay, Carrie, take it away.
Berry City is 126,000. Berry Town is 156,000, and Spalding is 210,000.
What about the
See,
BUUSD?
The C building, I don't know if that's included in the Spalding number or
That
not.
isn't included in this.
It's not, so.
No.
So C square footage would be, what is it? It's,
10,000 square feet.
yeah.
So the C building is 10,000?
Yeah. probably right.
do we
Just
have anything for the central office also part of this
That's what I was
calculus?
just gonna ask.
No, that falls under, well, actually, the central office has a $20,000 line item for example, the paving, you know, or roof repairs or bathroom renovations.
So it doesn't fall underneath the dollar per square foot plan?
No.
But for
interesting.
historical purposes on this, Jamie came to us all a few years back and said traditionally, the way it should be budgeted is $1 per square foot, and that's just to maintain the buildings and keep up with them and have enough funding to do, you know, projects throughout. And we have never, we have never been able to put that $1 per square foot in our budgets, but.
Actually, I was the one that told Jamie that we need to do that for the high school. That's where it started.
That's where, sorry,
then
it
we-
started with,
then-
it started with
Then we
Paul.
backed it down down to 75 cents a foot. What I'm concerned with, I do have a concern in this number, especially this time of year. If you take all the square footages, and it may not amount to a lot, but at about $1 a square foot, now it's a 33 and a third % increase in what we've been spending. What does that number look like? I mean, now we have the square footages, we add it all up, which I think Terry probably already has. Am I correct?
Yeah, I do.
He's awesome.
So you have a total of 492,000 square feet? in these?
492,000 square feet without the C building.
So it's 500,000 square feet,
So it's
so it's
$125,000.
$125,000.
Yeah, 123.
So it's $125,000 we're throwing in. And the only reason why I bring it up is in case if we have to go backwards or cut into the budget somehow to make this thing work, whether we have a positive budget moving out of here and then the voters turn it down, we have to have an alternative plan or another alternative plan. I like to have those things noted, so I say, yeah, we can come back to this little scroll hole. And that's where we'll find those little nuggets and we'll pick them out. So for the record, that would be about $125,000 if we froze something this year. That makes sense?
So,
Right, now you-
go ahead.
Jamie would remind us all that if we never get to that $1, we're never gonna get there, but.
Well, we're getting there
We are doing a lot of improvements and we have been able to make some
We got a
upgrades
$7
too,
million
so,
project.
so, and it's not, and
Yeah.
he'll also point out, it's not like we have horrible buildings that are in disrepair, so.
I think one of the things that would help us in this regard too is the 5-year plan, and I know Jamie's been working on it, but
That
the
was my
the
question.
5-year plan is pretty bare bones, and there's not much in there. And honestly, if you look at the years 2024, Berry City shows only $20,000 of expenses, 35 for Berrytown and 20 for Spalding High School. Not the correct numbers. We'd certainly do a lot more work than that. But if we were trying to justify this to the community, they're going to go, why do you need a $123 increase when that's all you're spending each year, right? So I think this document's got to be more accurate, and that'll certainly help us. And some of the items that are listed in this line item are not on the plan, and some are. So again, I'll bring that up at the facilities meeting, and we talked about it a little bit, but we get to get that so it's more accurate. Yep.
Is there, when I look at this, I'm thinking, is there plans to do the playground? Sports field, I think I've heard conversations about that. I'm wondering if there's dollar amounts to this lighting upgrade, Terry.
Well, so the lighting that we just approved it here a few weeks ago, that was 719, I think, ish.
719. Here,
719, yeah.
719.
So 719. The athletic fields and the auditorium, there's some very dated numbers, but that's going to be a process. It's got to be all rebid, or not rebid, but revamped, because yeah, those numbers I'm sure are going to change dramatically.
Right.
So
So-
719.
So this would be a total increase of
$719,000 for the lighting project. And the other question I had on the Paul mentioned it a little bit. So in terms of going from 75 cents a square foot to $1 a square foot, so we're at 30%. But I mean, inflation is kind of running 8 to 15%. Are we? I mean, I know Jamie wants us to get to $1, but are we being a little aggressive there and being 33% versus? Could we pick 20% and be more reasonable and should cover the increased expenses? I think 85%.
Right,
I
Want to
think
go to 85, maybe 85
Somewhere
cents
around
a square, something like that?
The only purpose was just to say that if we had to go somewhere, that might be one.
we have
place
some
to
more
go.
room.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only reason. I didn't, in some situations, you might say you might need to have $1.50 a square foot because certain things are falling behind, but you gotta also have a realistic budget at the end of the day.
Right.
I think I beat up on that enough.
All right. We agreed on something. That's good. 85 cents for construction lines. Lisa, did you get that?
Well,
he did.
Are we seriously wanting to make that change tonight?
I would, not at this point.
I would put it in our notes.
I would put it in your notes.
We're
Absolutely.
draft one, right?
Yeah, for
So-
draft
Yeah.
one. Yep.
I just wait till we get through this whole process and see what we are.
Okay. So wood chips and heating fuel. So Lisa, you did a great job securing some,
Yes, we were very lucky to jump on that $3, 3.48. Yeah, that was excellent.
yeah, and then
Six.
$1, 0.51 for propane. Yes.
Yeah.
So I put together, I think I'd showed it to you last time. So I put these figures in, and it looks like based on your budgeted items, and Terry, you correct me if I'm wrong, you're a little short about 60,000 on projections.
For this current.
Well, it
fiscal
would be for this year,
For this
yes,
current year,
for
yeah.
this current year.
For the current year, yes, yeah.
Okay.
We didn't anticipate the oil prices going. We anticipated them increasing, but not to the degree that they did. So you're right. We're a
All
little
right.
short on that.
Right,
But
so-
oftentimes it gets offset by some other line items in a
Mhm.
$50 million budget.
Okay, so I'm thinking for next year, what's your thoughts
For next year, we
for
have,
budget? This is
I think and there's another increase for next year.
yeah, I think overall I added in about $20,000 for oil for next year. Oil and wood chips, 20,000.
That's above what you just settled on? Is that what you're saying?
So that's still gonna be short if you compare it to this year, because this year you're gonna be short 60,000, and if you're adding 20,000 to your budget of this year, you're still going to be.
Yeah.
So I would just make a note, because I don't think we need to, just make a note that I think we need to look at that again.
Mhm.
Because based on what I figured out, this year we're short 60, or 55. And then if you only added 20 based on your budget of this year.
Right.
Okay.
So I have a quick question, which might make this go a lot faster. I mean, when we talked about the square footage thing, we see that could be $125,000 increase overall by going to a block. We're talking about $20,000 increase for wood chips and oil. That's what you're projecting right now. Am I correct, Lisa?
That's for 24.
That's for 24.
Yeah, but
For the security line items, do you have a number? Do these things have actual budget numbers that are increased that you can just quickly give us and be done with it?
what do you want to be?
So in other words, we have like an increase, it says right here, all buildings increase in their security line items for camera replacement plans.
I think I saw that was like.
That was 10,000 across the board. So each building increased their, for camera updates, they increased their security line by 10,000.
So would that be 30 or 40,000? Does that include the C? So we got 4 buildings, that's why I'm thinking. it's
Berry
out.
Town, Berry City, and Spalding.
I think C is security.
No,
systems.
nothing at C.
They're all
Theirs
good.
are all new, so.
So I agree with you. So if we could have get costs associated with all of these items, would have been huge help.
They're in the plan.
They're in
They're
there.
in the-
Well, I know they're
Yeah, but
in
you have to
here,
bid for 'em.
but
That's-
yeah,
that's it.
but this is what we're having to do. And I'm just thinking,
Okay.
you know, Lisa probably knows these like the back of her hand, and
Okay, so note next to each one and the amount. That's what you're saying.
Is the camera stuff an issue, or this is just preventative, just getting ahead of it?
It's getting ahead of it. It's, in each school, there's definitely improvements that can be made. One, the technology gets outdated.
Mhm.
So, you know, the technology is improving remarkably. And I mean, some of the cameras we currently have are of dubious health. I'm sure our principals here could attest to that. And if we can upgrade, it really makes a difference.
Yeah, so I'm gonna, facilities meeting, I'm gonna ask Jamie, that probably should be a 5-year plan item, right? Just so we can stay out of it, right? We can keep on it and know what the expectation is. Yeah.
when was the last time you guys put in security?
Well, it's been ongoing. So,
Adding.
I honestly don't know when the last time we had we've had security cameras for years, but in terms of, they've just been upgraded as we go, slowly but surely,
Piecemeal.
added to, tweaked. But technology is getting remarkably, well, one, cheaper, but also much improved.
Okay.
But we started with a overhaul, and that was $55,000 for the first overhaul. Then we went through, I can't think of the technology company, and then had a mostly upgrade here, and then it went into the other schools, I understand, so I don't know where that is now. That's a good question.
Okay, snow plowing. So contract, is it with the city and the town? Lisa?
No, we currently contract with Thomas Properties for snow plowing.
All right.
But our contract, we entered into a 2-year contract, and in FY '23, our contract ends, so we'll be having to, either renew if they can keep the price down below the CPI, and that's always a good route to go, because if you have a vendor, a contractor that you is very reliable and you have a good working relationship, if they can, if you know, it just makes it so much better to renew, because, you know, you might run the risk of entering into a contract with another vendor who isn't necessarily as, you know, reliable. So,
But where are total costs for, oh, how do they charge us? I mean, is it a flat fee? Is it every time they
It
go
is a
out?
bid contract.
it's per lot, and it's, you know, they would come in, they would go on a site visit to each of the buildings, and then give a bid, and that's what they did.
I think maybe, were you asking, like, do they charge every time they have to comply, or is it like an
Well, I
annual
just want to
fee?
know what the fees are. Is
Yeah.
it a flat fee that they charge you for the season, or in
It's
this
an annual, it's an annual for the season. We pay from October to May, and we pay a monthly fee. So it's not per time that they come and yeah.
So whether it snows or not, we're going to be charged.
October, exactly. And some years we're winners, and some years they're winners.
And control the weather. And what
Right.
is that? What is that dollar figure?
Not necessarily. I believe it's somewhere around $90,000.
It's for all three buildings. Does that include the C as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And does it include the central office? I'll say it just to get it out of the way.
Yes.
She said all
buildings,
buildings.
okay.
Yeah, so you're thinking it's around 90,000. Okay. All right, great. Any other questions on that? So kitchen repairs and maintenance is being charged to the food service fund utilizing surplus in this area. All right, I need some explanation on this.
Okay. So in past years, we've added 15,000 to each building because obviously we have very large commercial kitchens. They're used every day, and that requires a lot of maintenance. But over the last 4 years or 3 years or so, in Barry, you're very fortunate because your food service runs like an enterprise fund. And so the money you receive, the revenues pay for themselves. So it pays for the program itself, not to mention the surplus. So you actually make money on your food service, which is very unlike, you know, anybody who does a self-operating food service. For example, Washington Central, you know, we have a food service management company. So we make money on our food service, and we're able to pay for all of our preventative maintenance out of the food service. So it's not in your budget. Not now, but if we, you know, at some point needed to move it to the general fund, that's obviously part of your facility, and you would need to do that.
You're saying to move it out of the food service budget line or revenue line?
You don't really have to do anything with it. It takes care of itself.
At this point, we have a substantial surplus in our food service. So I was just noting that those expenses will continue to be paid through the food service program.
Is that part of that 771,000
Yes.
balance?
That's what
Okay.
my next question was.
Yeah.
What is the surplus at 771?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
it. Yeah,
Kind of like we have the capital fund and the tax
Okay.
organization.
All right.
The food service, yeah.
that's exactly it.
It's slowly sinking in. Okay. I'll find it.
771,057.
Yeah, that's not bad. I said 71. I didn't get the 57 part. Thank you, Jerry.
All right, I'll just look for it later. All right, so we're moving on to early education. Berry City, Berrytown School, early childhood special education. Increase permanent substitute lines. I'm assuming that's substitute staff. Okay. at Berry City, Berry Town. Each will have 2 full-time permanent subs. In addition, early childhood.
Special ed.
We'll split 1 permanent sub between the 2 programs for a total of 5 permanent subs. So how many permanent subs do you have, right? 3?
There's 3 budgeted currently.
Okay.
And the way that it was explained to me by Elizabeth is that, you can't function or you can't continue to have a program open with preschoolers when you don't have this appropriate number of staff.
I could just add that relying on day-to-day subs is just proven untenable, and folks who work in the pre-K programs have to have specific licensure and certification, background checks, all that. So this way we ensure, if we can fill these positions, we can ensure that we have, from a safety standpoint and from a licensing compliance standpoint, that the right people in place.
So it's like if you were to open up a daycare, you have to have a certain staff to student ratio, and with preschool, even though, when
Can't
we're
mess
in a
around
school
with it.
setting, it's like a home daycare or something like that.
So are we not able to function now?
It's very, like with staffing everywhere, it's very tricky. We're relying on, I guess where Elizabeth is coming from is what we currently have is not adequate.
But you're making it work.
That's the line everywhere right now.
Right?
Okay. So when we use the permanent, and I get what you say when you say subs. I mean, they're available when they're available, but
We need somebody to rely on. And pre-K is a whole different game. To have people with the right skill set and who the kiddos are familiar with, and all that stuff.
so this is two positions right here, two full-time subs.
Is it fair to say, Chris, that you're just reading the narrative here, that absenteeism is kind of what's driving this?
Part of it.
It is, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And as we move out of the pandemic, do you see the absenteeism rates improving?
Oh my goodness, that's the $64,000
Absolutely, of
question.
course, right,
I
yeah.
certainly hope so.
Hope so.
I think a couple things to bear in mind is that with absenteeism outside of pre-K, we have a little bit more leeway to just be stretched thin and figure it out. That doesn't mean, what happened at Spalding a couple weeks ago, we just couldn't do it, but generally we're able to do it. Pre-K, there just isn't that leeway. So we have to do everything we can to ensure we have the proper adults there. I wish I could answer the
No,
absenteeism.
I get it. It's just, from a simply black and white perspective, we have to be compliant, but the reality is we're paying more to deliver the same services, right?
And
because we have absenteeism.
And this will be, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa, but in lieu of the daily subs. Then we won't need the.
Okay, so we'll see an offset with daily
There
subs.
should be an offset. That's the whole point of this. It's just more reliable. Steady.
Okay, so I just need some clarification. So because people are out, you need subs to come in and fill, but they're not going to be there every day, or they are going to, 'cause you're saying full-time.
Permanent subs, it's a permanent position. So we have permanent substitutes in all of our schools now who have an assignment every day.
Correct.
We fill it. The same would be the case for pre-K.
Yes. Okay.
So this way we would know they're available, if they're insured and there.
So is it one position with 2 subs filling when it's needed?
It just depends on the day. It depends on the way the day is.
Okay.
And the permanent subs would be trained to either cover for a teacher or one of the para educators in that.
Or special educator.
Okay. All right, any other questions? And the costs on that, so for the full-time subs, are they still paid at the same sub rate?
Yeah, I typically will put in $35,000 for a permanent sub, which covers their wages and benefits.
So that would be times 2. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Increases in health, office, library, facility budgets are due to CBC becoming independent.
You skipped
Right there?
PT.
Oh, sorry. Well, probably I put it together wrong. Which one am I supposed to be on?
This
Yep,
one. Oh,
okay.
yeah.
And I'll go back to
Just
this
went
one
backwards.
after. I flipped it over.
For clarification, oh wait, we haven't
Yeah.
done the ELL piece.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Here I am. Where-
Yeah, I was trying to figure that out. This one here needs, okay. Somebody, Chris or Lisa, want to explain this one?
So, for our ELL at this point, we are, we need to really figure out, and this has been something that we've had discussions about, but a district-wide ELL program, more or less, because right now at Berry City, there's an ELL teacher. At Spalding, there's a 0.25 ELL teacher. And then at Berry Town, a student moved in and they didn't have an ELL. So really what we're doing is we're just kind of piecemealing this when in reality, we really should have district-wide ELL. And so we're looking into grant funding for that. So this particular highlight is not necessarily adding money to the budget, but it's just rethinking the services for English language learners.
I would like to add, we just want to make you aware of this because, as Lisa alluded to, it's very hard to predict families in this situation. We just had a young man come to Berry Town from Ukraine, and he is just doing incredibly well, but he needs those services. So we're pulling support from Berry City. And I would also add that the earlier we can plan this, the better, because these are incredibly hard positions to fill. So getting ahead of it, that's why we're trying to do some of this. We're trying to anticipate we could have more of these families coming in. We want to be able to help. So
You don't have anybody that speaks Ukrainian?
well,
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, it used to be Spanish and French,
Yep.
and you,
yep.
Yeah.
And then there's when I was
Bosnian.
teaching Bosnian, Turk.
Right.
I mean, it really depends on the world situation. So. But anyway, it just, as Lisa said, we're looking at other funding options for this, but we just want to make sure it was on people's radar. That's why we're-
okay, so this is really kind of $0 right now.
Plan.
Okay, all right. All right, so am I on the right one?
You are.
Sarah? Okay, Berrytown Middle Elementary School.
Before we dive in, can I make a clarifier on this?
Yes.
It would help. The third bullet down includes 9.5 interventionists. I just want to be clear that that's not a change. They currently do have 9.5. So I'm not exactly, we might not have even needed to put that in. I think that Jen and Erica were just trying to make sure they knew the importance of these positions, but that is not an addition or change to what things currently are. Just wanted to,
Can I ask a clarifying question on that?
I'll do my best. Yes.
So while we have the 9.5 interventionists, are they all in our current budget or are any of them grant funded currently?
They are, Lisa, you can maybe answer that one. I do know that at least 2 of them are unfilled right now. The Berrytown ones, I believe, are all in the budget. Yes.
The 9.5 are budgeted for in the general fund budget at Berrytown.
I don't know if that was Sarah's question, but I'm going to ask the question that's similar to that. These interventionists, did they come from positions that might have been ESSER grant monies and got absorbed into this budget, even though you still are maintaining the same number?
I don't believe from Berrytown.
Okay.
Lisa, again, feel
I
free
had
to
that
jump in on
question
that.
later on, that's why I thought I'd get it out.
No,
These-
they
yeah,
are interventionists that are
Are and
that
have been
are
budgeted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Literacy and math, interventionists.
right.
And what's the dollar on that?
Remembering that it's not a change or addition.
So I wouldn't worry about it.
So it's no
It's
change.
in the
Okay.
budget neutral,
Oh, okay.
with the exception of salary increases or whatever else.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because
It may have been in there just to point back to the strategic planning.
So if it's
Well, I
already,
think as I was meeting with Berrytown administrators, they didn't have, they didn't have all of the positions filled, but they wanted to be sure that they continued to have the 9.5
I want us
interventionists.
to cut off.
So are those part of this, the positions that we always see at the the surplus? Those line items that,
Like the surplus because of unfilled.
yeah,
Yep.
are these positions in there?
So what would happen is that the 1.5 that's not filled would then offset other expenses or be part of a surplus at the end of the year. Is that
Article,
a question?
no, this is almost like a sidebar question. The two individuals or the 1.95 that we haven't got filled right now, did they leave the district or did they go elsewhere in the district?
They have not been able to find one, and 1.5 moved to a different position.
So 1.5,
So
It's-
there's
2.5.
So of the 9.5 positions, they have 8 positions filled. One of them they have not. So one FTE they couldn't fill. They haven't been able to fill. And 0.5 of a person, an FTE, moved to another position. So there's an opening for one.
They have 8.5. Or they did have
They have currently 8.
8.5. They have
So
8.
are these positions in that, at your end of your expense or revenue? I wish I didn't, you had a name that there was always those unfilled positions, staff that they've been on there for years and they've never been filled. And there's
Okay.
No,
always,
that's not the case with this. They've always been able to fill their interventionists. And this year they were not able to.
okay.
It's a question about the number of students. It's not really a finance question, but it certainly piqued my interest. So it says 2 of the literacy interventionists are supporting the 110 students in grade 5 through 8 and unable to support the other 65 students. Are the other 65 in 5 through 8 as well, Chris?
Yeah, so those are kids who currently qualify for those services in middle school.
So the number struck me. So I went and looked at our most recent enrollment report, and 5 through 8 accounts for 289 kids. So 61% of our 5 through 8 graders are not meeting their literacy benchmarks. Is that correct?
That might have been the figure they were coming up with, but bear in mind that the 65 who are currently not everybody gets the same degree of services.
Right.
Same thing with ELL.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it is simple. A term you use in ELL is monitoring, just checking in on kids real quick. They might be on the cusp, so I can't speak to exactly where they are in the continuum of needing interventions, but I wouldn't be as alarmed by that figure as it sounds.
Okay.
Because it's by degree.
Okay. So my next one was next thought on it was, so if they got to 5 through 8 and aren't meeting their literacy benchmarks, why? Right. So what happened in pre-K through 4 that they got to 5 through 8 and don't have what they need, right? So as we're looking at interventionists on 5 through 8, should we really be looking at back farther? Saying what didn't work back,
and all of that work is happening at the curriculum level. Now.
Okay.
Looking at, we talk about this a lot, those curriculum
Yep.
things, right?
Yep.
That goes up to that top thing about
Right.
teachers looking that you need less intervention when you have better, that we call it that tier 1 instruction. So that's what we want to focus on. And that took a hit during those 2-3 years, the pandemic for sure, for a lot of kids.
So because I'm a numbers guy and I like to look at these things, when I look at the intro to the narrative and the highlights, and I see Perrytown Middle and Elementary School narrative, I see that the representation of pages 1 through 9 is $9.8 million and change, and we have an 8.25% increase. Is it because of these things in here that it's increasing, or is it because of the general salary amounts and benefit amounts that are going up? What is equaling out to the 8.25? Because as I go through this, there are differing numbers for different buildings. I'm trying to get a handle on this.
Right. I think it's important. I'm glad you brought that up. I think it's important to understand this is a first draft, first pass of this. When we get to the Barry City numbers, for example, that's still incomplete in terms of the work that the Barry City team is doing. There might have to be some additions or even deletions from that, because I think they only have in there
Yeah,
off of admin, like they have office stuff. So there's some other kind of intervention pieces that aren't necessarily going to come from the general fund. There might be other sources where that comes from. So, I mean, Lisa, you can certainly help me with this, but I think that 8.25, you're talking 2.8 positions they're suggesting here because of the increase numbers in the primary grades that they've been looking at. You've got that increased subline, and then you have that one behavior interventionist. That will contribute to that 8.25.
Right. And just the overall salary, wages, and benefit lines increased. Right.
And you said the bulk of the, like 80% of the increase overall is
Right.
based on that, right? Okay.
So when I just took all the salary and benefit lines and pulled them out and compared them from the current year to the proposed 24, that was an increase of 80% overall.
So if we're looking at a $4 million increase, over 3 million of that is just stuff that we don't have a whole lot of control over.
Well, yeah.
So
No
we-
part of it, we definitely have no control.
Yes.
So we got to
The other
back up
part
2
is
bullet
still
points. I don't want to
Yeah,
make sure.
sorry.
Yeah,
everybody
you
gets
do.
it.
Absolutely.
The
So,
other part is still to be determined, because we haven't gotten
so on the at 9.5 and okay. So these positions, there was 8 filled, 1 is not, 5 moved to another location.
Another position.
25. I want to stress again, it's almost like I wish that paragraph wasn't in there because it's not a change
So it's not affecting the budget as far as cost wise go. Okay.
in addition.
Okay, excellent to know. That's good, but then I'm even more concerned about the 8.25. So let's back up to the top. Additional classroom teachers from 39 to 41.8. Student enrollment increase. Terry, I knew you. Go ahead.
I have questions.
Yeah.
So just because there's lots of staff stuff throughout this thing, one of the things that I had talked to Lisa about a couple of days ago was, is there some sort of an overall staffing summary, instead of trying to pick it all out and we're all going to drive ourselves crazy looking through? Is there some sort of a summary to say, hey, head count last year was this, these are the unfilled positions, these are the budgeted new positions, transfers, something a little higher level, adjustable, you know what I mean, staffing report. And Lisa, I can talk to you some more about that offline too. I can call you and do that, but I think it would be helpful instead of trying to pick them out all over the place, because they are kind of scattered throughout.
And regarding this top one for the classroom teachers, I mean, if you look at those enrollment reports we do quarterly, you kind of get a handle on the numbers. I will say, and this is actually a good thing, we've had increased numbers for primary grades at both Barry City and Barry Town. You want young families coming in, that's good. But Barry Town is seeing the crunch in K1 too.
So looking at that, Chris, so the enrollment report, I got it right here. So we talked about this, and I don't remember when we got this most recent one. I think it was back in August, that
Right before school started.
Yeah, I think it was. But it, we are a whisker below in our average class sizes or student to teacher ratios. We have, for a guideline, we have a minimum, an ideal, and a maximum. Our average is still, I don't know with the new numbers, the 815 versus the 803, but we are definitely below the ideal student to teacher ratios. And I'm certainly not trying to shortchange that we need to add teachers, but if we bulk up our classrooms to at least the ideal number, do we need one less body? I don't know, right? I don't know. Yeah.
I have another question that's relative to the whole report, and I know we're going through it, synthesizing it. But we've had, over the past few years here, we've had a lot of unfilled positions, especially in the paras, and we've gone quite a long time without it. And I would dare say that a good chunk of our surpluses come as a result of not having filled those posts. So if we're not filling the posts and we're getting by as we have in these last 2 or 3 years, I'm not saying this is good, bad, or indifferent. Should we be looking at another model, another metrics? If we're not going to fill them, then, you know, we pull those numbers out and utilize this for maybe something else that maybe it's not a pair, but is along the line of an intervention or another teacher or something to make this thing work and be more practical. But you're reducing a lot of enforced numbers when you do that, but you're also getting more effective education.
Yep.
Just the
I completely agree with what you're saying. And this is actually what Paul's bringing up here. I think I shared it in one of my board reports recently, that though we're being sort of forced into this situation because of the staffing shortages, like for example, we've been having to shift some of our existing literacy and math interventionists into working with our students who are on IEPs. Now, with Act 173, this is actually a desired outcome, because what you want, instead of having paraeducators, with all due respect to our paras, instead of having paras work with our most needy kids, we're now having our experts in literacy and math intervention working with our most needy kids. You could argue that's exactly what we should be doing. The problem is we've been forced into it, and it's taking away those services from kids like what Erica and Jen talked about in that blurb on the interventionist. There's some other kids who aren't getting those services now, who are more on the cusp. But I think, to Paul's point, ideally what you want to do is look at it from a systemic standpoint and have our experts working with our kids and have different systems in place. So in other words, have less support staff and more professionalize those folks who we do have working with our kids. I think that's a welcome development, but we've just been forced into it in a way.
Well, there's another part to that, and I'm going to go to the insurance side of that. When you reduce down staffing force, you're reducing down a number of your insurance plans and benefits plans that go with that. And you're kind of taking two and moving into one that's a more substantive situation. That's really one of the things that can give you a major cost benefit and actually make your budgetary plan work even more efficiently. Just an overall analysis.
And I know, looking through the actual line items, there are many places in our list of reduction in paras. So they are in there.
And it's addressed in the narrative piece in the special ed section too, to a degree as well.
Yeah. Lisa, do you know a number of how many paras positions you've reduced? Because it's kind of hard when they're sprinkled throughout. Do you have a ballpark of how many?
I don't. I mean, bear in mind that we have been struggling pre-pandemic to fill all these positions. Right. And but if I'm correctly, so we're currently at 15, 17 unfilled para positions, which has been pretty consistent, certainly since I've been in this position. But I think before that, it's in that 15, 17 range.
Yeah, I would say. And actually in this budget, we have reduced the para line 104,000, just anticipating that we probably wouldn't hire them.
Out of those 17 positions, how much does that $104,000 line represent in the number of paras being reduced? I think we were talking about 30,000 and
three paras.
I would argue that if we're not filling them, that we ought to take a quantum leap and move in another direction, and that might be a factor in looking at this budget that makes it more salable.
So kind of going through the whole thing, just rough. I come up with, if you pull out the 9.5, because I had them included before, but I see it 20 to 24-ish new or transferred positions. And I would assume some of those are offsets for paras, kind of to your point, right, Chris? So if we cut some para positions, we're going to replace them with some professionals. So some of these positions may have instead of filling 3 paras, we're going to hire 1 X. Right. Does that make sense?
Potentially, yes. Yeah. And if you look at and I don't want to jump ahead, but there is a whole section from Stacy and special education folks too that made address that.
I think that's what I came up with, 20 to 24 new people.
Is there, we're looking at some creative ways to meet the needs of our most, of our kids who are struggling the most, with professional folks. And you know, one of the hardest things right now is finding licensed special educators. It is just, I mean, we still have, if I'm right, Lisa, 5 unfilled positions, 6 in the 3 schools, plus C.
Special
So,
educators,
special
yes.
educators.
Yeah, between C
that-
and Berry City.
And that's been one of our, if not our biggest challenge, staying close. Our biggest challenge this year.
Chris, can I ask you a question? When you say professional,
Mhm.
are you talking about somebody with an actual license? Okay.
Licensed credentials, as paraeducators do not need licensure.
Okay, so it could be anybody.
It could be a person with,
Take a test or something.
they
paratest?
they take the parapro test. They have to, but they don't need licensure through the state. So when we say professional, that can be a school counselor, it can be a special educator, a math teacher, et cetera.
Yeah. A general question, kind of like what Paul said, that kind of fits through this whole narrative. So this is FY24. So this won't take effect until July next year. Right. So 9 months out. So, and I was reading part of the narrative, Lisa, that we made, you know, assumptions and whatnot. So being that a lot of it is assumptions and it's, you know, it's kind of crystal ball stuff, do we anticipate all the current circumstances that are helping us make these decisions? So the current circumstances today, do we anticipate those continuing and being a factor when this budget comes into place, right? And crystal ball, so I get it.
Really great question.
Yeah.
I mean, we are doing our best to anticipate the kids. The trajectory has been, you know, you know, we're seeing particularly in the social emotional side of things that the needs of kids are continuing to expand and grow. And that is not unique to Barry. And with those needs, you need folks who know what they're doing. If I can put it in just plain language.
Just have a question. I don't mean to move it ahead too quickly, but you know.
Please don't.
Yeah, I'll wait.
Yeah, I'm trying, forgive me if I'm taking us off.
Please don't, because I'm trying to stay on this. This is my first year dealing with this budget. I don't need you to muddying the
You wanna
waters.
go to the head of the one FTE behavior interventionist? Because that's the only thing that's left.
Thank you for
Increase
bringing that
subline.
to my attention.
You gotta hit the subline first, the second bullet.
Yes,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Subline. Increase subline based on actual needs. Okay, so I had some questions. How many subs do we have? And all, like, can you tell me let me ask you this question. So we got a list of subs. Now, do all schools share those subs?
Not necessarily.
Okay,
There are some, I think, and I'm going to be speaking anecdotally here. I'm not going to speak with a high degree
Sure.
of authority, but I know that generally the substitutes that we have specialize in each of the schools. Like I go to Berry City or I go to Spalding,
right.
and you know you have the age specialties and all that.
Right.
I don't know how many we have who work in multiple schools. I know when I was at Berry City there weren't many. And bear in mind that daily subs are very, very hard to get.
How many do you have on the books right now?
That I don't know that. I don't know that. I could find that out from our sub coordinators for sure. And it varies, Nancy. You know, it varies.
I think that it would.
You were.
Yeah. Yeah, and I
Um,
did Berrytown and
yeah,
Spalding.
yeah.
And I know when I was at Berrytown, I prefer the older kids.
Yeah.
And that's why I like Spalding.
Yeah.
I like the older kids. Not that I don't like younger kids, but
Yeah. I think if you were to ask our sub coordinators, they are public relations experts. They're working very hard and making these folks feel welcome and making it work for them.
so you don't know how many you have of total subs
I'm
for-
sorry, I do not
Okay.
have that figure. I know it's variable.
Oh, no, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Well, I was just gonna say that I think, I love this conversation because it kind of feeds into what I mentioned a couple times now, where I would really like to see us come up with a really good plan for the whole entire district to share resources, to combine buildings, to to find all those creative ways to make some of this stuff easier just by doing things smarter.
Strongly encourage you to keep that
I'm gonna,
conversation going.
you're gonna
Thank
hear
you,
me, you're gonna get sick of me.
So each school has their own list of
Well,
subs.
not
Do
on
they,
that, I
do
wouldn't.
they?
sir. No, but not that one, for sure.
No more of these.
No, for sure, seriously, please continue working on that. It is,
Yeah, back to subs, we've actually, over the last couple years have really started to, move toward more permanent subs. And so we have probably across the district, I'd say 18 potentially, permanent subs.
Permanent,
a
yeah.
18
much
to
more
20.
attractive position.
Mhm.
Is it a leader clip? Some
Can be, yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
And that what comes with being a permanent sub is benefits, where a daily sub doesn't have that. And so our schools, our administrators have really, really felt that that has been a huge benefit to them.
It's reliable.
Andrea,
I was just say, Carol Merrill would be your best person. She has the total list of subs, and subs choose which buildings they'll work in. So I'm on file now that I do Berrytown and Spalding. I just preferred the hours at those two schools. I used to sub at Berry City, but they have later times. So anyway, yeah, Carol Merrill would have the overall list of how many, and you'll end up getting a higher count, a skewed count if you do it per school, because one person might be at all three schools.
right, well, that's what I was thinking. They had a grand list that all three schools could use. And then my other question is, what's the average daily, I'm not talking about permanent subs because permanent subs are there every day, but what is the average daily subs, the percentage of subs that you use at each school every day?
I don't have that. What I will say is that on any given day, many of these absences the majority of them, unfortunately, are covered by existing folks we have on staff. So it basically, you use the permanent subs, and any substitutes you have to prioritize around classroom teacher positions, right? Like if the second grade teacher's out, the likely support staff are out, and other folks like that are out, you basically just triage and try to pull it together. So it's hard to judge the amount of subs we need based on absences. We basically bring in the subs we've got on a daily basis.
Okay.
This
right.
is just for normal stuff. Like at the beginning of the fall, you have lots of illness, right, for kids and adults.
So how are you going to increase the sub line? Just by adding?
The way I read that,
Long-term
the way I read that is basically just making sure that we have availability for more substitutes, because they're struggling to cover right now.
So I wonder how you're going to do that if there's
Great question.
Okay.
Great question.
Can I ask just about this blurb? My understanding of this, or the way that I read it, was that we were increasing the rate just because when we do have staff that are out on FMLA leave, we have to put in a licensed sub, which requires a higher rate of pay
That is correct.
than the normal rate. Okay.
That's right.
And
So-
and we obviously have to give people the ability to be out on
If
FMLA.
people are on maternity leaves, for example,
Okay.
we're contractually obligated to make
Yeah.
sure
Those
that
are
we
long.
honor that, but also that we have, if they're out for more than the 6 weeks, that we have
Right.
a licensed person in there.
And I would also add, the reality is almost every year we overspend our sublines for that exact reason. There's a huge organization. We employ about 550 people, and it requires a lot of substitutes. That's just the way it is.
Well, the contracts give them certain time off. We have to be able to backfill that. So.
Have to.
Okay, now we can go to the wonderful time behavior interventionist.
Oh, I didn't want to talk about that. I was jumping ahead of that too, so that's all right. You just continue on. Now.
Okay.
I'll just
We're gonna put you
nose
on
along
hold
with
for a
you.
moment.
That's all right. No problem.
All right.
So, investigate these guys.
So the behavior interventionist is not the same as the interventionist.
No. Well, they're, first of all, a behavioral interventionist is a non-contracted position. So BI, so they're on that non-contracted schedule, and it's an hourly rate. Whereas the math and literacy interventionists, those are licensed positions, the equivalent of teaching positions. Behavior interventionists, however, are non-contracted because they don't require licensure.
So you've said this resulted in increase in unsafe and unexpected behaviors for students across all the grades. How are you managing now? I mean, I know that's probably you're thinking, okay, well, we're doing the best we can. We're making it work, but
Jen and Erica are stating they could benefit from an additional person in that role.
Would the behaviors where they should maybe outside services? I mean,
in years and eras past, you had a lot more outside. I mean, this is a discussion we've had at the board level.
Okay.
Just the availability of outside agencies, their capacity to help school systems right now is incredibly limited. So much more of that work helping kids and families is on the schools.
And incredibly expensive.
Incredibly expensive. If you need, for example, Washington County mental health or alternative settings. So we're increasingly, especially at Barry City, needing to manage that in-house.
so when you say manage, you're just managing, or you're just kind of keeping it so the child can get through the day. I mean, are we in?
I mean, from a budgetary standpoint, for this, the purpose of this discussion, I think it's just important to note that you're going to hear from principals. They want to get beyond just managing. They want to get to the point where we're doing much more proactive work, restorative work, which is really until the last 3 years, we're making huge progress in this area. And right now it's tricky. And I think when, our Spalding leaders are here, the need for this is going to come up for them as well. So I think this is a budgetary consideration we have to consider as the resources outside of schools within our communities, within our region dwindle, become harder and harder for kids and families to access. It's increasingly on us.
So what happens if you don't meet the needs? What is your backup plan?
Violation of some laws.
You can be.
To start with.
You can be.
But it can't be for all.
I mean,
I think more to the point, and we've gone through this at the board level.
this is a bigger discussion.
It's a bigger discussion. And
Well, no, I'm just, in reference to this, I'm just wanting to know how you would, if the budget doesn't allow you for this.
We have to go back to the drawing board and think creatively.
Okay.
And which is what we're doing now.
No, go ahead, Terry.
Does if we could be successful at the staffing up at C, does that alleviate this at those higher grades?
It can alleviate some of it, but we don't want to look at an alternative setting as the end all for all kids, because you got to understand so many of the behaviors that we see in schools can typically, when you have the right resources, can be addressed right on the spot before it becomes big. So ideally the kiddos can succeed in their classrooms with that minimal support. But if you're lacking that minimal support and you're having to deal with the bigger stuff, some of those kids start to slip through the cracks. I think that's one of our biggest worries we got right now. Is having one behavior interventionist added to Barrytown going to solve all this? Nope. But it's at least, creating potentially more options if we can get the right people. And that's a whole other piece. This isn't just a money issue, it's a human issue. Being able to find the qualified people able and willing to do the work is a huge challenge every school's facing right now.
And this was an issue that I brought up when we were looking at hiring personnel for this type of a post. And it's difficult to get people. So when we had a culinary person who was applying for a math interventionist and we granted that, several of us asked the question, and I think it's true to the fact that it's hard to get people to to have relative intelligence enough to do this kind of work. in the
Very
first place.
challenging, specialized work. Indeed.
Right.
But it's also really cost effective for us to handle it in-house as opposed to
Totally.
outsourcing. If you
I
sign
would agree
warrants,
with
you
that.
can see where
Along,
some students, if they have to be placed outward, it's tens of thousands of dollars. every
along the
month.
continuum from just
I know.
in-class support
Yeah.
all the way up to if those
Oh,
children need to see.
Right, I agree, but I'm just thinking, if you're having a hard time getting people, if you don't get this, I mean, then what happens? Would you rely on your interventionist or some other?
To a degree, that is what we're
Yeah.
doing. I mean, I saw Mrs. Waterhouse today doing behavioral intervention at Barry City, our principal there.
All right, so which page are we on now, Sarah?
Interested in the help.
Okay, you're good.
Can I ask that question on the high school piece?
Nope,
We're not there yet?
we're not there
Well,
yet.
technically, the line is, if you're talking about just this
No,
piece,
no, we're gonna wait.
Okay. Very good. question. We had different time.
Have a cookie.
I got cookies. I'm busy.
All right. So increases in the health office, libraries, facility budgets are due to CDCT becoming independent. While they are not sharing expenses, we are receiving offsetting revenues based on the lease agreement. Okay,
so that's kind of what Lisa said
Rick explained
earlier.
it, offset by rent.
offset by rent.
Offset.
Yep,
by
this
the
one
lease,
says,
so.
yep.
So much.
And how much can
I
we,
think she said 400,000.
okay, that's,
We have. Okay.
all right, moving on. Music accompanist reinstated. This is used for concert rehearsals and concerts, as a choral director cannot direct a concert while accompanying students. We are anticipating a full return to concerts, which is in support of our arts program.
I think I saw that this was only $5,000, but
I
I
would
might
just
be
say
wrong.
hooray to this.
Okay,
It wasn't-
moving on.
It didn't seem like it was a significant amount. Okay.
so that would be great if Lisa, we had the cost by these, that would be great. Yeah. All right, so SRO reinstated. To say that safety, okay, so is this at Spalding?
Yeah.
Okay, this would be at Spalding and only Spalding?
I would welcome,
And what's the cost?
I'd welcome Mr. Mailer or
85?
Miss Miller or Luke to pop in. But if I can give an
Actually,
example,
I wrote these responses.
yeah, Miss Miller wrote these, but
I should have you up here reading them.
we used
got
her
the
as an
spelling right.
exemplar. Hey,
You did,
do
I'm
what
just-
Mary
my
did to
mouth,
this.
it's late in the day. Okay,
So, with the SRO, I think the best example is what recently happened when we had a perceived threat in our building. And I had to reach out and contact the police to come in, and if we had an SRO in the building, we would have had 8 police officers in our front office, as some with full assault rifles, quite honestly. And having SRO in that situation would have made an enormous difference. And that's just one example. Anytime that we've had issues with safety at athletic events, things like that, where we've had to call in the police because
I agree with that.
we didn't have coverage. And I know the board last year was really concerned about student safety, and that this was brought up, and having an SRO present in the building would make a tremendous difference. My previous experience with an SRO in the building, we actually had SROs that coached. So we had these athletics, so they worked with athletic teams, and so built relationships with kids, totally changed the climate in that situation.
Or Flurry at Barry City. Perfect example.
Yeah, so having an SRO, and I feel like with Chief Bale, he's very receptive to this. He's very supportive, and he would work really hard to make sure that whomever was placed is somebody who would really interact well with our student population.
Gets it.
And it must have been very overwhelming or intimidating, let me use that word, intimidating for all of those the police officers to be here and the students in that day.
So the students, for the most part, were in their classrooms, so we had all that set up. But at the same time, I had to ask, please don't come in with your sirens up, right? We don't want to freak people out.
Right.
But to have somebody in the building would have made a huge difference for us. And that's
Besides,
just one incident.
besides storming the beaches of Normandy with 8 people coming through the door, one of the concerns we've had over the years, let me go back a long ways with SROs, is that quite often they are pulled from the building if there's another call out in the city. And we're usually on a contract basis. Would there be a negotiations dealing with the fact that we're paying for time served?
I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, we'd be working with the Berry City Police on this. I think the best way to put it is that our early relationship with Chief Vale, we see a real collaborative relationship here, which I think will bear fruit. But they're dealing with the same staffing issues we are. You know, he's got to make sure his force is fully, he's got a full bench before they can, you know, have somebody join our crew.
No,
We just want to keep it on the radar. We see it as a need.
I don't have a problem with an SRO because, you know, that really went well with the other security network. What I was concerned about is paying for something where we were getting pulled. And Balmer said we're just going to do it by a straight contract, and there was a lot of days where things happened, officers got pulled, and there was no one here.
Right.
And that's kind of concerning.
Yeah, you don't want to do it when it's unclear how it's being paid for and it won't be effective. It's really going to be the right person. Luke might have something to add on this one.
Go ahead, Luke.
Thank you. I'd like to add, you know, some of the comments and the experiences that we've talked about when we hear about SROs, we think like, oh, good, we need somebody that's here in case someone comes into the building with a gun. That is absolutely worst case scenario, and that's something that they could provide support for. But they can also come in and work in our classes, like for driver's ed, be a guest speaker, for our forensics class, our criminalistics class, being present during passing times or in the cafeteria, so students can see that, you know, police aren't just scary people with guns on their hip. You know, they're humans, just like Mary said. Having them do coaching or be involved in clubs or those kinds of things, I think is really critical to that building community comfort and community, you know, awareness. But I agree with Paul that however we negotiate this, we have to make sure that we have somebody who is able to be with us on a consistent basis. And I do feel like Chief Vale absolutely gets that and understands that it's not a street cop whose beat is the hallways of Spalding High School. It's someone who understands kids, has a background and interest in working with them. And I think when you have that type of a person in the building, it really creates a strong, welcoming, safe atmosphere and environment.
Thank you, Luke. I'm glad you said that because in my mind, I was wondering, you know, what they were going to do, whether we're just going to walk the halls every day, because that wouldn't be a very fulfilling job. I mean, just coming in but
just as a final thought, we're dealing with more and more social issues in our schools. I mean, if I had to look at something and say 40% of what we do right now in schools is really geared towards social issues that come in, families, whatever have you. I think this is proven out a number of times where you have some parents that are coming to the schools, they have an axe to grind, having that SRO there acts as a nice safety net. It gives a secure feeling not only to the students, but
somebody that
faculty
comes
and
unhinged.
even the administrators. I mean, the administrative officers will always.
They can build a relationship with the families too.
Yep.
Jason's a master at that stuff. Or Corporal Fleury, I should say. It's essential work.
That's all I understand.
I would just like to say on this that I support the accompanist in the SRO, and I think the SRO is broadly supported in the community. I think there's a lot of support for this position in the community. However, I would just like to caution that these two positions are being reinstated, and there's going to be critics out there. They're going to say, we pulled these to get our budget down, and now you're sticking them back in. So I think we just need to be cognizant that some folks might say, yeah, we want this. You need to pull something else. So just to say, I support them. I think it's the right thing to do for sure.
Okay. Sorry, I got a mouthful here. Okay, a half a full-time employee, work-based learning community service. How is that operating now?
With two people being incredibly overworked. We've got a work-based learning coordinator and we have our distance learning facilitator also running community service. And in order to really expand and meet the needs of the kids, because the work-based learning especially is incredibly popular. And
Said it is.
it's very popular, and we're very lucky to have somebody who's incredibly dynamic, who's been running this and growing the program.
Is it one person?
Right now it is.
Michelle Francis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I know who she is.
Spalding.
Yeah, she's just amazing.
Super.
But she's also done a great job growing the program and getting kids out in the community and stuff.
And this is for the whole school?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the community service piece, a few years ago, Spalding implemented a graduation requirement of 40 hours of community service. And it takes a lot to coordinate that, especially when you're talking about over 500 kids and trying to coordinate that.
Is it just for seniors?
They have to have graduate, but they can earn those 40 hours over their 4 years.
Over their 4 years, okay.
Yeah, but trying to track down community service opportunities for kids and then keeping track of that it's quite a job. I have some experience in my previous position dealing with that, and it's a lot to negotiate.
So do you have is it the same contacts that you have all the time, or is it different? Do you have to reach out to them all the time, or?
It could be different people. So, right now there's some fall-related community service pieces going on, but then those aren't going to be going on in the future. So then you're looking at what's going to happen through the winter, what's available in the spring, what are some things that are happening over the summer. Some things are ongoing, but then other things are individual sections, like the carving pumpkins for one of the local nursing retirement homes, right? That's a very October thing. So those hours aren't available in November or April or whenever. So things change, things evolve, and trying to keep track of that and find something appealing to the very different personalities in our population can be pretty challenging. And then having to catalog all that work, that's a lot.
Okay.
If I can interject, because it started on my watch when we were dealing with the high school. And this goes back before the Act 46 union. Michelle Francis worked tirelessly, and I think Brenda Waterhouse was involved with that. And before COVID struck, when we actually had already merged, I think we were dealing with 107 different organizations, including the hospital, Blue Cross Blue Shield, a whole bunch of businesses, Rocket Aegis, and so forth. And these kids had a chance to see what it was like to be involved with these various types of workplaces. And in some of the cases, in many cases, it changed the career path. The kids, they say, well, no, I didn't like that, but I kind of like this. And also there was kind of an integration between some of the companies and so forth that were willing to actually say, if you go to a 2-year school, maybe we'll help you with some of the funding and we'll give you a job when you come back. This was a kind of an alternative opportunity for kids to have a career path once they left high school that wasn't a 4-year college degree or an associate's degree in something else. It really was something that really transcended the entire school.
I participated in that back in the old days too.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to lose Mr. Athor.
Oh, Luke, go ahead.
Thank you. Part of the justification as well for the community service coordinator is that we are recognizing a number of our students and their families are recipients of community service themselves, and may not have the resources themselves to go into the community or drive 20 miles away to provide some service. And so we're really looking at different ways that we can provide community service opportunities at school during the school day. So as we're talking about, organizing opportunities, we are branching out into organizing internal opportunities, and that's a whole nother layer, because it's a graduation requirement. And if kids don't have the resources to access those things, that may hold them back from graduation. So we really need to make sure that we're supporting all of our students to meet those requirements, and to add that layer onto our existing personnel it's just not reasonable.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. So the work-based learning contracted services increased.
So, again,
You
this
should
is
just
just,
come up here and join us.
this is just additional support for, the work-based learning. There are services that, the Michelle needs to contract with, and knowing that costs around are increasing, to go in with the same amount in the budget for that, doesn't seem particularly realistic.
So what are the costs?
That's, I'm not 100% sure, because this program is newer for me.
Okay.
It's been what I've been able to observe. Luke, do you have more insight on that?
Go ahead.
Sure. Some of that is transportation, certainly during the school day. Some of it is resources to promote the programming, to bring in, I don't want to call them vendors, but to bring in folks that we want to introduce them to the program, community partners, I should call them. So when COVID hit, we lost a number of those 100 plus, and I think we were edging up on 140 or so. It was really, really impressive. And we just lost so many. And even now, we still aren't able to have all of them back. Some are still not opening fully for our students. So I think some of that costs is promotion, some is transportation, just different expenses. Yeah.
So what are we looking at for money there for work-based learning contracted services? I mean, another question for Lisa.
I think that whole program had basically one or two people on it, so it was really the structure, transportation and stuff.
Here.
Michelle
That-
has asked to increase that line $10,000.
And it basically is transportation, Luke.
Yeah,
And
her notes are allied health, STEM, and human services. So, and transportation is all part of all of that as well.
Lisa, how much into the STEM program did she allot?
She says 5,000 for STEM.
Yeah, but that was an important piece of expanding that program.
okay.
We're in the process of figuring out what the STEM program is going to look like. We have the facilities that Mr. Francis has been able to kind of, those resources she's got. So we're trying to expand out that into what the full program will look like. So whether that is through a coordinator and putting that person in place to build out the curriculum and everything for our STEM program, but we are actively working on what that's going to look like.
Engineering.
Or your science, technology. Yep.
I'll say STEM. Should I say STEAM?
STEAM.
We would include
I don't remember what
art
the A stands for though.
into it, yeah.
What's the A?
Art.
Art, sorry. I should have known that one.
That's good. Okay. All right, next one is, Terry, you all set on that one?
Yep.
Okay. Add a behavior specialist.
So we have a behavior specialist, but he's paid for through ESSER funds. So we have to move him from ESSER funds into our budget. He is amazing. The work that he's doing around restorative practice has been just wonderful. He's very well received by the kids and the faculty. He actually led our professional development that we had last week. And again, that was really well received. So it's just, we've got to fund him with the ESSER money drying up.
I could add a little clarifier. This gentleman was the person who replaced mid-year our assistant principal when he resigned last year. Some of you may recall that. You guys weren't on the board, but you may recall it. Sarah, you might. He came in and wow, real difference maker, this fella. We really see value in this position, keeping it on board for the high school to assist with our administrative team, our counselors. Real valuable.
So we're absorbing him.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
You're probably gonna say the same thing.
Oh, yeah, no, then I'll let you.
I know, I was just, go ahead.
Go, you go ahead.
So all the value, got
Yep,
it, get
got
it. You know what I'm gonna say.
Yep.
We've had lots of discussions about ESSER funded positions and when the funding goes away, what are we doing with folks? And,
Yep.
and the kind of the standard mantra up to this point has been, we're gonna absorb them through attrition.
Yep.
So this is a conversation we're gonna have, I'm sure, with several of these folks in here where we see that they're ESSER funded and we want to move them into the budget. So we've got to be very sensitive because we have told the community that as ESSER dries up and gets used up, we got to figure something out. We can't just continue keeping all of them.
Completely agree. I think I would state in the vast majority of these, that is exactly going to be the case. Yeah. This is a position that I think at school, and again, Marlon, or you guys can jump in, see it as a great, it's just a really important piece, emotional. Let's just try to take away this individual. For the record, his name's Jonathan Strong, but let's just forget the individual.
Right, exactly.
But just looking at this position, we just thought that we've looked at this as something that the community can really value and get behind. But yeah.
Thank you. So I just wanted to put out the high school has 3 primary support centers. And Tide Pool is really focused on academic supports. The Harbor, and that's where Mr. Strong is posted, is a room that is a kind of like a reset refuge type space for short term. Come on in, turn around, learn some breathing skills, some self regulation skills. What's your intention for the day? Some kids are checking in the morning to just get centered and grounded and ready to go on through their day. But as we've worked more with Mr. Strong and seen what his skill set is, we're seeing more of a need for supports around writing and developing behavior support plans, mediating discussions, having restorative conversations with students, with staff and students, and even with families. So we did some of that last year. And so what we have found, because you'll see the second part of that line, is and a support student support specialist, is we're finding when we have one person that is kind of chained to that room, they aren't able to get out and access the classrooms, the students where they are, attend meetings, because anytime that they need to attend a meeting, we're having to shut down that space and it's not available for the kids who need it in the moment. And that's why we're talking about adding a person who's not a professional level. They are a specialist level where they can supervise the room, but maybe don't have the same qualifications to be writing plans and facilitating meetings. So that's why we're seeing both of those things in there, but they are absolutely critical roles. And as Chris has mentioned a few times during this meeting, student mental health, student availability to access learning is just a significant concern, and it's on the rise. And so we need more people who can support all of our learners. And that's kind of where this is coming from.
I just want to add in this conversation, and I 100% agree with Luke, is that as we dealing with the aftermath of COVID and students' lack of socialization or that ability to, we project next year we're going to have the challenges that's at the middle school right now. So we're going to have to just keep integrating and absorbing and teaching and learning, and we need personnel to really teach and to help and to support our students. So I want to name that.
So if I can interject a thought, and I want to piggyback
Go
on
ahead,
what
Paul.
Jerry says, the concern is we were looking at attrition. I'm not saying these positions, the reason why we put them through ESSER was to get this in, to help kids, work with kids. But we also said when the funding ran out, that the attrition factor was going to be the way we're going to do it. So we're going to have a lot more ESSER funded positions as we keep moving forward that are just going to come to an end with that funding. And we have to look at that. How do we have the attrition to take that in? But on the other hand, having two hands, I'm going to bring up the other hand. The other hand is we've been saying we've had shortages of teaching personnel and personnel, period. So you would think that the attrition should automatically be there, but maybe it's not in the right locations. Is that what I'm hearing?
Potentially. I think it's also important to know that, you know, there are still ESSER funds available for FY24. We're trying to kind of like start to ease some of these positions if there are going to be any. So there's not the sticker shock for FY25. We're going to see much more attrition, I think, for the FY25 year. That's where because we'll still be in the fairly close post-COVID world next year. I mean, to Marlon's point, we've got a real tough cohort coming up for 8th grade. So, but I think you're in both schools, by the way. But
Sorry.
it's yeah,
That's my kid.
yeah. I'm sorry. Excuse me. But to your question, Paul, it's a good one. I think you know, it's the areas that where we can't find staffing. Special education, that's the biggie, and we're having to figure out different ways to meet those needs.
But to that point, I'm trying to think outside the box, and I think Sarah and the others picked up on it already. I'm trying to find the little benchmarkers where we can come back if we have to try to figure out how to get this overall budget under 9%. I mean, that's going to be sticker shock to a lot of people. I mean, when I first opened the pack and looked at that, I'm sure everybody had the same thought, and we're still got negotiations and everything else coming up. So with that all being said, I know we're going to have more ESSER folks there when those funds come to an end. You're hoping you can absorb them through attrition. We now have such a case right now where this is from last year's ESSER. It's now come to a termination point. We're hearing that there's shortage of personnel in certain areas, but on the other hand, we're taking on this position, even though there's no attrition for that position. I think the position is laudable. I really do.
You're right.
But I got to look at the holistic approach of what it takes to build a budget, make it acceptable, palatable, and sell it.
Maybe one way around the attrition to address the attrition question here is this is a classic example of a professional position taking the place of what normally would have been done by support staff that we're not going to be able to get.
So let me ask another question that
Like
may.
a lot of paras used to do this sort of work, but maybe less effective.
So we may have an answer in disguise here. Do we have positions that are currently open in the high school, for example, or anywhere in the school district that we can use as a supplement to saying that's kind of an attrition? We're down one here. We're not adding that back in for whatever reason, and now we want to move this because it's important.
Yeah.
Can we do that?
I think that's a great question for us to look at. I mean, I know we have para positions unfilled at the high school, for
Isn't that
example.
right?
I think I knew what you meant.
And I think we've talked about this in the past. We've talked about trading out 3 para positions for
Indeed.
such and such.
Yeah,
This,
exactly.
in our view, the work that this position is getting done right now is more valuable than 2 or 3 paras.
And maybe the answer is pairs. You know, you need pairs at the high school level. We just don't replace 2 pairs. That's an attrition in my book. I mean, it's an attrition in a number, if nothing else, and then we keep the position. That's an absorption, I should say that. It's not keep the position, it's absorb the position to attrition somewhere else.
Right.
I mean, I don't.
So if this
how
position
strict- how-
ends,
how
you got
strict
one
is it?
open
That's
over
what I
here,
wanna
you
know.
put them over there.
Exactly.
And I
We're
had
gonna,
that,
this is gonna come up a lot. I mean,
Well,
from now
it is,
through the
and
end
I've
of
got-
ESSER, this is gonna, we're
I
gonna talk
thought
about
that
this a
same
lot. yeah.
thing, found another one in here. I thought that same thing. Why not have this person share or go over here and do this?
And we're really going to be looking at, how these ESSER funded, grant funded positions can be absorbed into the general fund through, but that's something that's kind of a work in progress, because it's who's planning to resign, who's planning to retire, and then we'd be filling those positions with the ESSER grant funded positions.
That's why I was making reference to, after your expense revenue sheet, you have a list of positions that you haven't been able to fill. I don't think they've been identified what positions they are, but.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, two pairs. If we haven't filled them in 2 years, 3 years,
Right.
chances are we're not. So
And
if you
then-
pull that out of the budget number and this is equal to it, then
Right.
you've got neutrality.
Yep, and additionally, if you can substitute those 2 or 3 pairs for something like this, it doesn't make sense to fill them.
Right.
So this is better. This is more
That's what
desirable.
we talked about before, right? Sorry, related that now.
You did well, Paul.
Some people.
Okay. Let's see, where are we? Replacement plan for cameras.
We already talked about that. For
Yeah,
Berrytown, it's the
that's what I
same
thought.
thing, $10,000.
Was it 10,000?
Yep,
Okay.
for each building.
All right. Lighting project lease payment. Is that you, Terry?
Well, that's essentially a done deal. So
That's
it's
what I
gonna
was
be in the
thinking.
budget, but that's all done.
All right.
Yeah.
Which page are we going to now?
Before you go on, I have 2 questions on the high school thing. The one I was going to start off.
Oh.
But Sarah said we're into that whole area, so I figured we go through the whole area and then come back to my general question. So the general question, and I have a lighting question. The general question is, when I read this, we're dealing with a Spalding narrative that says.
Wait a minute. We're not there. We're right
Well,
here.
I haven't dropped down there. I have a question in the area.
On the
we're reading.
lighting? On the
No,
lighting?
on the area that we're talking about, it's called high school.
It's the header of the previous.
It's a header.
Just the bottom.
I just want to get through something.
Oh my
I just
God,
want to get.
I don't know how this printed out like this.
Yeah, but the clarity on this $10 million for Spalding High School, when I go ahead and I read this last page, I'm gonna get through it real quick.
Now you're really messing
It
with
says
Paul.
that
Yeah,
the,
exactly.
it says that the funds for the high school incorporates the C, outside placements and early college. So is that $10 million reflective of the C budget as well? Because I'm a
C is
little,
part of special education.
No.
No?
And the enrollment
Is it-
numbers, I made a mistake and I added the number before I included C and outside placement. So the overall enrollment for Spalding is 648, not 568.
You both verified that with the registrar today.
Right.
That was a mistake.
so my question is the dollar amount, Lisa.
Oh,
When we say that
August
the
is
high
560.
school incorporates the
Oh, yeah,
C, the outside
648, right,
placements and early college,
But that
is
includes
that
C.
$10 million
Yeah, but that's what that's.
reflected on the C expense as well?
That does not include C.
C is part of special education.
So the 648 includes C.
But the 10 million does not.
The
Correct.
enrollment number includes C.
That's right.
You can see where it
Yes,
makes you
there you
scratch
go.
your head a little bit. Okay.
Okay. Thank you,
So
Paul.
the other question I had, going back to the lighting for a second,
Okay.
just that last piece, I mean, Terry's
keeping
always
us on our
a done
toes.
deal, but I have a question. If we have to come back to something, because this has a 700, and what was the amount?
$719,000.
$19,000
719,000.
plus 4% interest. I kind of did a quick math, and that's about $80,000 a year over 10 years. If we get to that point where we have to do something that might have to look at a budget number, I just throw that out there that there's a potential 80 that we could say, maybe we don't do it because of that. And I know we're getting into that contract
I was
aspect
gonna
too,
say,
because
contract
we're still waiting
implications.
to see what happens with the 7.4 million piece too,
Right.
with the same vendor.
Tuesday.
Right. I just throw it out there as a number, that's all.
I'm sorry, I missed that. What were you saying? We couldn't.
I did too, Lisa.
I got it. Let's see if I can
Want me to
phrase
rephrase?
Are you-
Yeah, go ahead. You go.
So if we need to save some money, we can pull the lighting project.
Or part of.
Well,
But I would assume we get into some contract issues there.
Yeah.
So.
Well,
Yeah, we've already entered into a contract.
you signed the lighting contract already?
Yes.
You did.
And we're involved in the
Right.
funding for it as well.
Yeah, that's the funding.
The funding of it. Okay.
Okay.
All right, Luke, you have a question? No? Okay.
I did. I just my understanding was with the lighting expense, we would be recouping the vast majority of that through our electric savings. So
That's correct.
it sounded like it was going to kind of come out very much as a wash. So I mean, maybe we don't spend the 80,000 up front, but then we're spending 80,000 more in electric. So.
Well, that's a good point.
I mean, I understand that. I mean, I'm looking at LEDs versus conventional fluorescents and stuff like that. And we are dealing with a 50 some odd year old building. I do grasp that, but I'm also looking at the totality of budget and possibilities. This is just a possibility. It may not even float. Now it can't float because we're oriented to a contract.
Right. But also, I'm guessing when you did the utilities budget, you considered that we'd be spending less, Lisa, at Spalding?
Yeah, and then we have our solar management fees, so we'll be receiving more credits as well.
Okay. So if we were to try and take that lease payment out, then the utilities line item's gonna go up, so.
Well, it's where we are right now, moving ahead, right? I understand, yeah.
Just saying,
All right,
the
that's all.
retrofit would have
No,
saved us. some
I
money.
don't
Just
want to
saying.
say more time on it.
Just saying. Just saying, Chris.
I'm to it. I'm to it.
All right, let's move on.
Exactly.
All right,
Had
so
to.
are we at
Clear
Berry
some
City
answers
Elementary?
Tuesday, hopefully. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
We're at Berry City.
Yes, we are.
All right, the addition of an administrative assistant.
Before we get into that, may I add something
Yes.
first to Berry City? A couple things to think about with Berry City. I think I might have mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, there's still some work to be done on the Berry City end of things. By the way, Spalding folks, feel free. Early day tomorrow. Good. Luke's already gone. Yeah, peace.
We're at.
Good night,
Thanks
guys.
for coming, guys.
Thank you for coming. I hope you got a great education, Miss Noel. I really appreciate you guys being here for that. That was helpful. Thank you. With Berry City, there are ongoing discussions about these restorative classroom models that we're looking at. Remember the mini grant that Alice Farrell's putting out there? I'm working on a regional level with our other superintendents to discuss this. We're working with outside agencies to look at how we can meet the needs of some of our most challenging kiddos, especially K4, but really K8. So we're looking at other funding sources for this. So this is a real unknown right now. And we just didn't think it was right to put this in here yet because we just don't have enough information yet with this discussion just starting. But there is, I didn't want it to be, by looking at this, that Berry City's only needs are that admin assistant. We really got to get this whole restorative piece for our most needy kids figured out. Hopefully not all on the backs of the general.
So are all these numbers not concluded? I mean, as far as.
Berry City is the
It's
one.
just a Berry City?
From a draft one standpoint, Berry City is the one where we still got some unknowns. But again, hoping to come from a place where it's not going to have big impact on the general fund.
Can we have the principals who work on these budgets here? I mean, it was helpful to have the high school principals here. I mean, they were able to answer some questions and do it in great detail, which I thought was good. I'd like to hear from Jen and Erica and Brenda, and just to kind of get their perspectives on why they have to have certain things and why they might say, well, if we had to cut somewhere, that would be the area we would go.
Yep.
And that's the kind of input that, because we're not in the buildings all the time.
Right. Now, I was actually in Berry City today for our meeting, and we talked in depth about this. I wanted to make sure going into tonight, because I knew we just haven't been able to dive deep enough into this particular issue. What I was able to share, and Lisa was able to share from Berry Town, was pretty accurate in terms of where Jen and Eric are coming from. But if we get to that place where they got to dive deeper into it, absolutely, of course, those guys will be here. But yeah, I get it.
I'm just used to working. People have their own budgets.
Okay, so the addition of an administrative assistant.
Now, they used to have, or they had an unfilled office position,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Did we take it out of the budget last year?
Yeah, so what happened was we had an office manager
Mhm.
in the budget who ended up leaving. We chose to not fill that. And it's just become clear that, and just from an equitable standpoint, the Berry City office staff is lower than our other schools. And given the needs at the school, they really,
I went in there and the sub coordinator was running the office instead of this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just not ideal. We really want to make sure that they have the administrative support
So you have
to run the
Brenda.
day-to-day.
How many are there? How many in?
With the sub coordinator, we have 5. In the way it's structured, it's good for folks to know. The positions at Berry City and Berry Town, it's done very differently, but the same amount of work is getting done. It just depends on the position. So we're really working hard and getting these positions aligned for the roles and responsibilities. But it's clear right now Berry City needs some more support.
So they have like a registrar, the sub coordinator, the busing person,
Sub
and
coordinator.
then just one office,
One receptionist.
one receptionist.
And that's what's killing them right now.
And it's
So-
they're having a tough time there.
Yeah.
Just filling the ranks. is what I've
And
heard.
like, for example, if you are at Berry Town or Spalding, they've got one of the big pieces of the job in the front office in the morning is making calls home for kids who are out, from a safety standpoint, making sure everybody's okay. That right now is being done in a triage mode at Berry City, and it's
And a
Well,
register.
it takes away from main
What is the
faculty
register?
personnel. That
The
should be
registrar,
teaching.
they each-
If you got to administer chaos. I mean, that's why I can describe it.
Shouldn't that, the register and the sub coordinator?
I really want to
Line?
support that. Put in there.
That third thing, no way.
I'm sure this one's pretty busy.
Yeah,
Okay, so there's 5 positions there right now,
If
and you're
you're
looking to add
counting the
one
sub coordinator, yeah, we're looking to add one.
in the, okay. And the cost,
I saw
I
that.
think it was like a.
That'd be a
Yeah.
non-contracted position, hourly gig.
Yeah. I had-
Yeah, and I would have added 50,000, which would include benefits.
So it's a 50,000.
And if you were to look at that, if you look at that non-contracted metric we have, they would be in that category of receptionist. Is that an A or a B? I forget, Lisa.
Oh, I didn't bring.
I
this
think
to
a
bring.
B, yeah.
I think it's a B. I think it's a B.
All right. All right, I think that's all I have listed. Central, okay. So
Lisa, what
think we're in order
is the health insurance plan the state has now?
Good night, son.
So in regards to,
Type,
Um,
whatever, gold, whatever.
there's 4 different, plans.
They get to choose.
Yes, they get to choose. Yeah. Single, 2-person, parent and child, which is, could be a parent and 2 children, as opposed to having to go with a family plan. If there's 2 parents, yeah.
Kids are generally cheaper.
Okay, are we ready for central services and special education narrative? Central services, is that the BUSD office?
Yeah, so exactly.
Things
So it's
budgeted out of the.
it's basically the central office curriculum, technology, and other positions. Yes.
Okay, so right off the bat, to me, what I would like is to know what the percentage, the breakdown of the amount for central services or BUSD office versus special education. And what the dollar amount and the percentage.
Sure.
Thank you, Lisa.
So the C program is in this.
No, I guess.
The C program is part of special education section.
It's on the next page. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought it's in this section.
We've got special ed.
Okay. All right.
I don't think so.
It says special education
Yeah, it
narrative and then
does.
special.
Well,
education
It's the
services.
header.
It's just the header for the
Right.
whole central
Section.
office.
Okay.
And then I think
Shebang.
that one includes the C.
If you go to the next page,
Yes.
when you
but
get to
this one
special ed
doesn't.
services and Spalding Educational Alternatives.
Okay.
Right.
So that's in the schools.
All right, so the first one, I don't know, we don't have page numbers, but on this page where it says central services and special education curriculum, looking for 2 full-time employees, curriculum coordinators to absorb into the general fund. They were previously budgeted and removed and added to ESSER grant.
If I can give a little history on this one, these were positions that had historically, Sarah and Paul, you guys remember these positions at the K-8 level. They basically worked with the director of curriculum and instruction. These are teaching contract positions, so they're under the teaching contract. But what they do is they coordinate all the curriculum work with the teams at the K-8 level. We want that to be K-12 now. These positions were eliminated, oh my goodness, by my predecessor and Karen's predecessor. I'm just going to be candid. We really did not want that to happen. These have been historically very valuable roles in moving our work forward. I mean, I think Karen's right in her description here. We lost a lot of momentum when we lost these positions. I think to Terry's earlier point, these are positions that were, to get them back in, we had to get them into the ESSER fund. And we just kind of want to get ahead of FY25 and start absorbing these now. But remember, this is draft one.
When we removed them, did we reallocate some of the work into other positions or rename them?
There was an
Sorry, I can't
attempt to
remember.
do that. The idea was, and Karen could speak to this with a lot more accuracy than I can, but there was an attempt to have our existing coaches take on a lot of that work.
Okay.
It just took away from all their getting in the classrooms, and this is the work that kind of plans all the professional development that goes on for teachers. It's just really, really essential.
That was my next question. Who are they supporting?
They're supporting our coaches and interventionists, working directly under our director of curriculum instruction
That's
assessment.
coaches.
Coaches, but also teachers, like working with the teachers as well.
At all 3
It
schools?
was historically K-8. We want this to be K-12.
K-12.
So if I understand this right, we used to have these positions and then they got eliminated by the curriculum director at that time. Then we brought them back through ESSER. We don't get in trouble with supplantation of roles, do we, by going through a federal program?
We shouldn't. I mean, this has all been vetted.
It has been vetted.
Yeah.
I get nervous about those things.
No, understandably.
Yeah. Okay.
By the way, Lisa, I welcome you if I've got any of the history wrong here.
No. And in terms of the supplanting, there's some flexibility with ESSER funding because it's considered more or less emergency funding. So the supplanting requirement or restriction is not there for ESSER, which is why we were able to have surplus, because we were able to pay for things from the general fund that we typically wouldn't. So we were able to use our ESSER funding for general fund type services and materials and things.
And that was vetted and that was okay. That was
Yes.
legal.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not ready. I didn't make that switch.
And these 2 positions will report directly to Karen Frederick.
I work under Karen Fredericks as
Yeah,
Director of
under-
Curriculum
Yes.
Instruction Assessment. Indeed.
Okay. Any other questions?
I don't dare.
All right.
Go ahead.
I would just also add that as we are starting to lose a lot of these intervention positions through because the ESSER, they'll be eliminated because of ESSER. all the more reason we're gonna need these positions in place.
I would also point out the point Terry was trying to make, if we're really trying to move in a way that would combine all of our resources, combine our schools. I know nobody likes to say those words, but
Well,
I think this-
We need to start
These-
saying it though.
this would almost be like a critical position, I think, in making that
In that
happen.
model, yeah, absolutely.
Because,
Because
I'm
we'd have to
so glad you
open it
brought
up.
that point up, because right now, despite many efforts in recent years, and it's really coming into the place now, our ability to align our curriculums, our curricula between the two, Berry City, Berry Town, has been very challenging to do.
Yeah.
Because we have different schedules, there are a lot of logistical things getting in the way, and this will be essential in that work. That's a very good
Well,
point.
we were supposed to do a critical modeling of that when we first merged. And I remember John Pandolfo was working on that. And that was the reason why we wanted to get the two grade schools on the same menu so that when they hit the high school, they were on the same beat. Now, if that didn't happen, why, COVID and everything else getting in the way, I mean, that is an essential thing. Just as a caveat, I would say, if we have there again, we still have a lot of positions that haven't been filled in the last 2-3 years. Maybe that's how you get the supplemental money.
Yeah, and I think,
Maybe I need to look at that as a
and
model.
just to review, for those of you who were at our curriculum meeting a few weeks ago, I did a very brief presentation of Karen's draft of a 5-year CIA plan. This is going to be how you get that done.
Yeah.
This is going to be how you get it done.
Chris, a question. I know Carol was working on an org chart,
Mhm.
and I know for me being visual, it would be really cool if we had our org chart existing and then plugging in these positions to go, here's where they would be, here's how they align, what they would do.
Right.
Um,
Wanna see
Visually, it
those
would be
lines.
really cool to see that.
Yes.
I don't know how close she is on other. I know she's been working on it.
She has, and we also have, this does exist for the curriculum team.
So you have org charts for certain departments and stuff?
Well, I think to your point though, it would also be nice to see, not necessarily the professional staff, but even the support people, like
Right.
what places, what schools are they
Where?
all serving?
Yeah, you want a
Where-
snapshot of where
Right.
people are and where those
Yeah.
lines are going.
It's gonna be a
So-
really, really big piece of paper.
Totally agree.
Yeah, it's a big picture. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know that AGC at one point down in Montpelier printed out the org chart for the Department of Labor and put it on their wall, and it literally was from there to there. It was amazing org
But it
chart, but
gave
it was
you a
cool.
nice
Yeah.
visual
Yeah.
of where people are and who does what. And I had asked for that a couple of months ago.
I know.
And
I
you
think
can
it's
see-
probably harder than a traditional corporate structure because there's so much overlap and support staff.
There is a lot of overlap,
in
KE.
Coker too.
But I think as well, this will also help give a visual between the differences between the two schools and how,
Right, it'll show a lot of duplication. I think.
Yeah.
I think it'll scare
show
you.
some duplication and also some equity issues for
Yeah.
the schools too.
But it'd be a great visual to really look at this. This is one thing to look at this way, but when you can look at it and go, oh, that's new, that's new, that's new. That's new.
Yeah, because in my mind, I'm looking at these curriculum coordinators and I'm like, okay, where are they fitting in? Okay, they must gonna be report to Karen, but where are the other people fitting in? So,
That had the best impact in the schools as a result.
That's the hope.
Yep.
The other nice thing about these positions are they are district wide as well, where even curriculum interventionists are in individual buildings. These coordinators work with both schools, so that makes it really helpful.
when you say both, don't you mean Berry City, Berry Town, and Spalding, 3 schools?
They're actually not serving Spalding right now.
Oh, but your goal
Currently,
is.
the goal is to
Right.
have them be K-12 folks.
So when is the plan for that?
Well, that's part of
I
that.
think
If
that
you
was
look
on
at
our
that
5-year
CIA
plan.
plan,
5-year plan that's
Yeah.
on there. Okay.
that we really want to get, and Marlon brought this up when he was here briefly, we really want to get K-8 aligned. That is a huge priority.
Any more questions? All right, grants and data coordinator. To a large section.
I I'm not gonna say I misspoke at the board meeting Thursday, but I was asked about the grant manager that we currently have, Joe. And Lisa, maybe you want to speak to this, because I think I was saying that the capacity of that job, it's its own separate position. However, there's light at the end of the tunnel there that I missed out. Do you want to articulate that?
Sure. So keep in mind that we've had a lot of transition in our curriculum department with directors, having left. But this is a position that we hired because we were receiving all of the ESSER funding, and we knew we needed support in the business office to manage all of the requirements of federal funds. And so now that ESSER, we've completed most of the writing of those grants. We're still having to do all the procurement and make sure that we're in compliance with the spending. But Joe is working with Karen, managing the CFP grant. That's our title grants. And that comes with a lot of rules and regulations, like all federal grants. But this one is more complicated, I would say. But with the ESSER grants sunsetting in 24, that's going to free up some time for Joe to work on. In fact, he's already starting to work on other grants and writing grants. So he's going to have some time, and I think that now that we've hired an administrative assistant to fill the position, the vacancy, that will give him even more time to really focus on writing grants.
So he had been focusing so much on compliance with the Agency of Education, what they were requiring, what the grants were requiring. Now he'll be able to, with that, as you said, sunsetting with all the ESSER work, he'll be able to actually do more like proactive stuff, seeking funds out there creatively, which is just could be really beneficial to the district.
So you don't need another position.
That's what we're saying. So
Okay, that's what I
Just
thought
a
you
kind
were
of
saying. Okay,
Yes.
so all right, so this is enough.
and so that's where I may have misspoke at the board meeting last I think it was last week. We should be able to pull this up without adding a position, which is good news.
And the admin that you just met, the administrative assistant that you just mentioned that you hired recently, is that what you?
Unfilled position for curriculum instruction assessment.
Okay.
So Karen has been in her new job working without any administrative support.
So what position was that? Curriculum?
Yeah, so it's the administrative assistant. So it'll be able to help her with the day-to-day stuff. This person's also going to be helping out with human resources too, with all the hiring stuff that we're doing.
All right, and then these two curriculum coordinators that will come on will also be assistants to Karen?
Yeah, and remember the admin assistant we just hired was not an addition. This has been an unfilled position for almost a year now.
Okay, all right. Get it all straight here. Technology. Two team members absorbed school-based webmaster responsibilities into the job description. So I'm not sure what that means.
Does that mean we got rid of a position?
Two team members have absorbed the school-based webmaster.
Yeah.
So
what
they-
that means is previously these webmaster responsibilities were a separate stipended position. And rather than pay people an extra stipend, we actually just absorbed those responsibilities into two of the I-team technicians. So there's an increase.
Was
I'm
that a
sorry?
replacement for the personnel that were down at Randolph that had a private consulting company?
No.
It wasn't
No,
them?
that was, no. No, this is, you know,
So what is-
each of the schools had a webmaster,
Okay.
and we paid a stipend for them to manage their web pages.
So you're,
And
sorry.
No, go ahead. I was
So,
just,
so you're saying this description is saying that, hey, we lowered the budget in this area?
that's what I-
well,
what does it mean?
we just absorbed, so where you might see an increase in the tech wages, it's because they've absorbed those stipends into their,
What,
so it
what
just
was that
changed
cost? What was
Just
that
shifted,
cost?
yeah.
I believe we paid this, it was $2,500
Oh, okay.
Per
for each school.
each, yeah, it was per,
Yeah.
okay,
Okay.
good. 75.
All right, so it was just basically a, hey, this is what
Move
we've
from one line to
done,
another.
and, yeah,
Yes.
okay. Added a cybersecurity line item at 20,000. These funds would be used to purchase cybersecurity planning and monitoring software and user awareness to boost our cyber resiliency.
It has been, this has been a nationwide, statewide, really tough issue. I think you may have all heard what happened in Randolph a few weeks ago.
Oh, but you're gonna tell me.
What's that?
No, but you're gonna tell me.
Basically, they had their whole website hacked and shut down. They shut down their entire system for 2 or 3 days. Emmanuel has really been trying to stay on top of
For
this.
money? Is it for money?
I don't know. I think this was part of the, if you read that story, it's about the transgender bathroom thing down there, and they were getting some national, international attacks
Yeah.
based on it. And so schools are really soft targets, school systems. And I know that Washington Central got hit last year, and that was a ransomware thing.
Yeah.
So Emmanuel's really been trying to stay on top of this. And
I was at the hospital when we got hit with the ransomware,
Yeah,
and I will
I was
tell you
just gonna bring
that
that up.
$20,000 is nothing
Nothing.
compared to what
Right.
an attack could.
just getting all our
Potentially fast.
family's information.
And I know a little bit
Yeah.
about this area, and I can tell you it can be lethal. So what would the software be like? I mean, to protect just the websites themselves, or what? What does this encompass?
Network.
To protect our network.
The
Firewall.
entire network? So there would be,
Monitoring, any kind of breach, that type of thing, and alerting the tech team if there was anything suspicious or any phishing emails, that type of thing.
does it have an automatic shutdown? I mean, if something gets detected, does it shut down the system to the outside? Is that what this does?
I'm not going to be able to speak with any authority on this. We can certainly have a manual. I would suggest we have a manual. This is an important topic, and I would suggest we get a manual, come to a board meeting, just give a quick presentation on this.
Can it include training?
Yeah,
That was
Because
what I was gonna ask.
that at the front end is a big deal.
Yeah.
We go through bi-monthly, every month training.
yeah.
Well,
That's what I mean by
well,
And
soft
to
targets.
the point
Companies
where,
will
as a
work-
corporation, we monitor everyone's test results. We test everybody twice a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what I mean by soft targets. School districts don't typically have the capacity to do what, to do
Yeah,
all
there's
this
a
stuff.
lot of, we do a lot of companies that do vulnerability or penetration testing, at least on an annual basis too.
When you
to
say
see
you
where
don't
they're-
have, what do you mean?
By that, I mean,
Because you have a lot of people that have access to the schools.
by capacity, thinking about the time for teachers and support staff to kind of do that sort of, that monitoring. Principals don't have the capacity to help with doing that. So it would be all on a manual. So we're trying to get, and his team, we're trying to get, build that capacity so it's not going to be on the
Wouldn't it be your
principals.
IT managing all that?
Ours is
Right.
done by an outside vendor, all the
Okay.
Yeah.
all the testing.
Yeah.
And it's accumulated on the outside and it's
Okay.
reported to our corporate headquarters. in
Yeah.
Michigan.
I'm more concerned about another aspect. When we had COVID, we shut everything down here. and
Everything
we-
went online.
Everybody was online, and we were
Right.
scrambling for the Chromebooks, and
Yep.
I mean, we bring them in by the box.
So
like
kids
kids-
are searching
Well,
this
I
and
mean, they're
that.
still there. Every kid in the schools have a Chromebook now.
I know it's
Yeah,
late,
I
I know it's
know-
late
I
in the
know why,
evening, but I
too.
just wanted to throw out about, training, because that is a key
Mhm.
Yeah.
element to cybersecurity. is-
Emmanuel were sitting here, he'd be nodding his head in agreement.
And I
And we
would-
do have a mandatory training. There's a couple different cybersecurity trainings that everybody has to take part in
That's what I was going
beginning
to
of the
ask my
school year.
staff and everybody.
But we get tested twice a month, every month. It's a constant drumbeat because we did get hacked.
That's the
And it
worst.
shut us down for 10 days.
I remember that.
And we were training before this, but we've increased the amount of our training because folks need to understand you need to be careful where you're going and what you're doing, and not everybody understands it.
Right, they don't. And if they get
And
an
that
email,
includes, and the other thing I would say is, that's all the vendors that have access to, we require that all of our vendors.
Yep.
So I just throw that out because if,
And all that too.
to put up a firewall is nothing.
This is well beyond that.
so
Okay.
does your IT department send out notifications like making sure that people, when they use their email?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Because
Daniel's very
that's
good about that stuff.
important. That
He's
is
very
so
good about that
important
stuff.
that
But you're
the
still,
IT department stays on top of that and lets your staff know. And even if you get some kind of strange email, send out a mass email saying, we've just had a funny email and it looks funny, be aware, and all this stuff.
but you're still gonna be dealing with an outside source that's gonna be monitoring and making the security network work. I mean, you're not really physically equipped with all the training in the world for teachers and what have you.
Right.
You're not physically equipped. When
But
you
the
get
IT
into the
people are.
cybersecurity aspect, you're talking about blanket wide. And that requires an outside company. So I assume that $20,000 is gonna be going towards hiring of some outside.
It was just says
Consortium.
monitoring software.
Yeah, that 20,000 is.
But
No, that's not gonna cover
And that's why I'm
that.
throwing it out there, because that's not gonna get you anywhere.
I'm gonna suggest that between now and Thanksgiving, we have Emmanuel just come in.
Yeah.
He can speak to this with a higher degree
That
of
would be
authority
great.
candidly than I can. And I don't want to speak for you, Lisa, but
In what Paul brought up about if you couldn't get into this building and it blew up, do you have a place, a backup plan or a site?
You mean backup files?
Yeah, everything that you could access.
yeah.
Yeah.
Continuous
Offsite
Disaster
servers.
plans.
Right.
We have
Right.
those.
Yeah.
Do you have
Disaster
another location
recovery.
that
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
disaster?
Part of the
yeah.
audits.
Do you have, I mean, if all, obviously you'd go virtual, but let's say you couldn't even use computers.
Right. Wow.
This is a very complicated subject, so.
No, I'm just saying that those are things
gonna
I
that,
said I was at the
tonight.
hospital when it happened. It wasn't fun.
Okay, let's keep going.
yeah, okay. Okay, increased software for online and blended learning.
Just part of the whole flexible pathway is having different options for kids to access their learning. It's always good to keep up on that.
So what software would it be?
Uh,
Is that an Emmanuel question?
It's whatever you're currently using. It's
Yeah,
just an
it'd be
increase.
enhancing it.
Yeah.
No, enhancing it,
Yeah.
okay.
These three bullet points all tie together.
Yep.
These three bullet points
Yep,
Keep it up
lend
with
to
times.
the potential of what happens if we ever get into another lockdown mode where we have to go isolation again, and how we get the true technology out that we couldn't do the first time. I mean, we had three different pathways. And
Well, that's
one
why I
of
was
them worked
talking about
really well,
disaster
one
recovery.
didn't work, and the other one we were screamed at all the time. I don't want to see anybody doing that again.
With all the computers and everything
Yeah,
got blown
I
up.
mean, that's it. No, but I'm talking about kids need to have access.
Mhm.
And then you have to talk
Absolutely.
about the programs and all that stuff. So I mean,
So-
it's a big subject.
Is there any, there's dollar amounts associated with these items, these line items, Lisa?
Yeah, we increased the software by $24,000 in
Okay.
Emmanuel's budget.
And the instructional,
And, you know, more and more classroom teachers are asking for software. And so he's just seeing an increase in the use. And he just knew that he needed to increase his line item for software.
What about classroom instructional hardware? Same.
Classroom instructional,
Standard
it's
replacement.
the same. Yes, yeah,
Right. Business office.
Hang on, one second.
yes.
Chris, is there, so like for the IT department, do they have a similar 5-year plan? I mean, there's a lot of computer equipment and screens, and do they have a similar plan to Jamie's 5-year plan?
Not to the same degree, and I am thinking this is a
Great
great
question, Terry.
opportunity to have Emmanuel
Yeah.
join us.
Yeah.
Because,
And
I
he has
think
a
he would,
2-year plan.
yeah. I don't want to speak for him. I think, Lisa, I think it'd be great to have him join us
Yeah.
just as an agenda item for one of our meetings before we get to Thanksgiving, one of the November meetings. It could be very easy.
I do know that they have a replacement plan. And they have, each building has an instructional equipment line for their Chromebooks and their, laptops and things. So, but yeah, I think having him come in and explain the terms of that would be great.
Could we have something in the interim that would help us out? Could Manny put together, Emmanuel, could he put together kind of a prologue that describes what he's looking for, what he has right now, and how this all gets integrated together with the backup numbers? That would give us something to look at while we're waiting for them to actually appear.
Excellent.
I think that would be a simple way of doing it.
Yep.
I think we all know how to read. Well, I do sometimes.
Most of us.
So more or less a summary of the budget. Okay.
What he's looking for within the cybersecurity line and the
Yep.
software line, but more particularly from my interest point of view, the classroom instructional technology, that aspect, just in case we have to go through that.
Right, and if he has a plan to what Terry asked for, if he's got a plan, that would be
Absolutely.
great to have that shared too.
Okay.
That's why we have a plan.
Well, even if it's 3. All right, a business office, increase from 2.5 to 3 full-time employees. So the assistant business manager is currently paid 0.5 for the food service. Okay, so is this, you're just looking for somebody to manage the food service program?
Yeah, so we, a couple years ago, we started because Ashley Young, who is now the assistant business manager, she was taking on those responsibilities. And there, believe it or not, even though we have a food service management company, there is a ton of responsibilities on the SFA, which is us, the School Food Authority. And so along with all the applications, we run a summer program that has several different sites. There is a ton of work involved. And so that has always been sort of under the umbrella of the business office. But because we had all this surplus funding, because Ashley was spending some of her time working on food service, we were paying for part of her salary out of the food service fund. And now what I'm saying is we need somebody to work exclusively on our food service program. And that would free up her to really focus on learning school finance in a more advanced sort of way to, I'm not going to be around forever. I'm getting to the retirement age. And so really just thinking that this would be as well a good succession planning move for us to really let her focus on learning budget development and some of those other things that come with my job.
So what would be the cost of that half-time position?
So again, we're adding this back in because currently, if you think about a business office with an organization as big as we are, and there's myself, and then 2.5 other people. So this would be 3 full-time people working under me. Technically, or, for the most part, in districts the size of ours and even smaller, there's a director of finance and operations, there's a business manager, and then there's 3 or 4 people under them. So we are bare bones, let's just say, in our office.
Oh, how many in the
So-
office again for the business?
2.5 positions.
There's myself, and we're funding 2.5 people. There's actually myself, the assistant business manager, a payroll person, and an AP person.
Okay.
So Lisa, this isn't a new position. We're just moving the half a person funding from food service to business.
Correct.
And
Back
then
to the business office where it belongs.
the current staff member that does school nutrition is gonna absorb that other half a job.
Right. We're either looking at that or a food service director who could really, because we're actually looking at C now. We've added C, and they're talking about being under their own self-operating food program. So there's a lot sort of in the works, and we're really excited about expanding our food program so that we can have more oversight and really hold our food service management company accountable for the food quality, but also do more for our students and the program.
So if it became a food service director, that would be a new position.
That would be a new position, and it would be paid through those food service funds. And one thing about the food service surplus, so technically we are really only supposed to have 3 months worth of expenses in our surplus, which would be about 300,000. So at some point, the agency is going to look at that and ask us for a plan. So knowing that, we're kind of taking, being proactive and saying, how can we use our food service money to really, and the only thing we can do with our food service surplus is improve our program. And these are the ways that we think will be the best, for our students.
Replacing expensive equipment, cooking devices and so forth is a good way to reduce that.
Yes,
All you have-
but keep in mind that when COVID, we received, I think we might have replaced about $200,000 worth of kitchen equipment through grants
The COVID money.
with COVID money. Yes.
Anything else that has to be replaced, how you reduce
I
it.
could use a new kitchen.
You need a new kitchen?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go. That'll help. But there's still more things that need to be replaced when you think of all the buildings.
Oh, yes. Yes, there's
what I was asking.
always, yes.
So you could spend another $200,000 or $300,000 in replacing equipment because you have to use the funds up anyhow.
Correct. I don't know that there's anything now that we need to replace. Because again, we went through all of the kitchens and did like an inventory of, what needs to be replaced. So there really isn't anything at this point, but that could change tomorrow.
So do we still maintain the in-house culinary program?
The
Especially the career center.
That's the career center.
CVCC uses, yes, CVCC still has a program. They're renting those facilities.
That's Spalding had a program where we had the green room and so forth.
That was done by the tech center.
That was CVCC.
That's what this is?
Yeah.
It's been a lot of years, I'm sorry.
Basically, the kitchen is the C.
That's new.
That's brand new. Yeah.
Right, and that's right.
And then we replaced everything else. Okay. Yeah, we should do my
It's always
kitchen.
Sarah's Kitchen.
Yeah, there's always mine.
There'll be something that'll come up.
All right, any
Okay.
more questions on this? Okay. Board, reduction in audit services due to unified district. Is there a dollar amount to that?
I think I saw 5,000. It was.
I reduced it by 5,000. Yeah.
Human resources, increase advertising, is that 5,000? Increasing advertising to reflect district-wide recruitment and job posting.
We're just trying to think
Right.
as creatively as we can to get out there. The typical advertising just isn't doing it anymore.
All right. Food service, it is likely that the benefit of universal free meals will continue for fiscal year 24. However, it does not the cost to provide. If it does not the cost to provide free breakfast and lunch to all students in the district, 800,000 or a 1.5% increase to the overall budget. Okay, so is this question asking us how we're going to pay for this?
It's just, this is still being discussed in the legislature right
Keeping
now.
it in mind.
It's just something more, just food for thought, dare I say,
Wow.
just, I know.
Okay, but it
Would
says
that be the
time-
cost at just Berry Town and Spalding? Because historically Berry City is received.
Very, yeah.
Correspondence.
It would be
Yeah.
only for those students who are classified as paid.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't, so we would only be paying for the students who are classified as paid, not free and reduced.
Okay, just to consider,
All right,
keep it in there.
FYI.
Yep.
Special education services and Spalding Education Alternatives, which is the C. Okay, incorporate instructional interventionist services into special education budget as encouraged by Act 173.
An example of this, we just, because of the unfilled special ed positions, we brought in though she isn't licensed as a special educator, we do have her as a licensed teacher, bringing her in as a regular ed teacher to work with our special ed population, consulting with teachers. So this is kind of a creative way to still, so we're funding it through special education, meet the needs of kids, even though we can't find special educators. I don't know if that made sense, but we're we're just trying to think outside the box.
Yep.
So this is a current position. This
Yes.
is already, this is a new position.
Is there an intent to qualify her as or he, or whatever?
If we can, but to get that special ed licensure will take a while for her. In the meantime, we still have the needs. So, and the good news here, I think I mentioned this earlier, this is actually encouraged. Well, that's one of the goals of Act 173, to kind of not have such clear black and white lines around special ed and regular ed.
Add 2 special service assistants to support clerical aspects of special educators' roles due to shortage of special educators. This is at the C building, or is this?
This is in, forgive me if I get this wrong,
Yep.
or correct me if I have this wrong, Lisa, but this is in general to assist our assistant special education directors, because the paperwork generated in special education is extraordinary, and this is what's really burying our existing special educators right now, because there's all kinds of compliance for this stuff.
Did we hear at a meeting a month or so ago that we already added these? I feel like I've heard this before. Like maybe there was
Yes,
some shadow.
so they have been added to the budget now, anticipating with the understanding that there's funding in the support Paris line. So yes, they have been hired.
So we already have the people?
Yes, yeah.
So is this a neutral costing line because we've already added it, moving into this next budget?
Well,
I mean, I'm trying to just
Right.
rationalize what just got said,
it's due to the shortage in staffing. So our special educators are having to support students, and they in turn need help supporting and working on the clerical type activities of their jobs. So
It's one of the biggest stressors in our schools right now, especially Berry City.
So am I understanding that you've already hired the people to do this?
Yes.
Okay, so what is the cost? And I think to what Sarah said, if we've already hired these people, they're already being paid.
I think what I remember, maybe when these came on or something, because of position, like special ed paras, maybe that we didn't have filled, we put people into this.
Yes.
Okay. Is that?
That's
okay.
exactly it.
So we're just kind of moving things around.
Okay, so do we need to budget for this?
Well, we're budgeting in a different place. So it's, we're moving from the para line to the administrative assistant line.
Okay.
It's just a shifting of the funds.
Okay, decrease paraeducator line to closely reflect the status. Saving, is there a savings there?
Yes, the 100 and I think I said 40, 104.
Dollars?
Yes, 1,000.
104,000. There's no such thing as a hundred.
104,000.
A savings is a savings.
I'll have a lot of groceries.
Yeah, you won't get much of that. Okay, increase in extended school year, staff budget reflects increase in summer hourly wage rates to attract and retain summer staffing. Okay, well, this sounds like an interesting conversation.
Big, important issue here, making sure we have summer options and hard to attract summer help.
Yeah. What are you looking at for costs and number of staff? And I mean, you must have some kind of plan.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And and when Stacy does her special education report, she'll be talking about ESY, about how that looks. But we had to boost the hourly rate to attract anybody. Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask the ogre question, in order to have this summer program, what is the total cost of that? And the second part of that, are we required to have it?
Well,
I'm just throwing up.
yeah, I mean, definitely it's part of our strategic plan. ESY services are required. Those are required. Those are special education services.
In the summer.
Yes. Yeah,
They
they're
start in July.
extended school year. That's what that is. And then in terms of our summer programming, I mean, we've heard that it's important to the community that we have summer recreation programs for kids, but also academic support programs for kids so they don't have further learning loss. A really successful summer program this year, folks, where people this past summer where many districts couldn't even run them. We had a thriving, really successful program we could be proud of, but it was a lot of work.
How many kids?
Oh my goodness. Hundreds between.
Yeah, we got the number.
Is it?
I shared all of that with you guys in a board report.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Okay, I'll look it up.
Malika Neto was our summer school coordinator and just crushed it.
Yes.
She just crushed it. I can't say enough.
The other reason we increased this line item is because C had a really successful program as well. And so we had to budget for that. We paid for that with ESSER funding this year, but we're using general fund for next summer.
All right, so if we can just get some costs on that. Paul, you have another question?
No, I'm just pondering life, I guess.
All right, increase occupational therapy contracted services 1 day a week due to increased fee. Okay. Okay. So you're increasing it 1 day a week?
So
the caseload is such that the one occupational therapist just doesn't have the capacity to serve all the students to, and so.
So explain to me what that means, occupational therapy contracted services. I think I have an understanding, but.
And now it's outside vendor providing the service instead of us.
Correct. And
Correct.
occupational therapy, those are specific services for kids who have specific special needs.
Okay.
And very specialized work that you know,
Mhm.
and if it's written into the kiddos' plans,
You
we
got
gotta figure it out.
Absolutely. Okay.
This is finding occupational therapists is also an incredibly challenging
I bet it is.
thing right now
Especially
these
pediatric
days.
one.
And in addition, we don't need a full-time person, so finding a 0.2 of a person is difficult. So contracting the service as we need it makes much more sense.
What are the costs? You can,
We added 35,000 for that.
okay. And add 2 student support specialists and 2 special educators at
Before
C.
we move on, just
Oh,
one
sorry.
quick question.
Paul's done
Just
pondering.
dealing with this. This seems like there's a trend here where the number of occupational therapy for the pre-K to 8th is going up. I mean, right now we're at 171. That's about 10% of the total population of both schools, if you put it together. A little bit more than that, but is that expected to go up even more as we move year to year, year over year? I mean, is this the trend? Or something like a trend?
I think the overall trend, and I would love Stacy Anderson to be able to speak to this. She could do so better than I could. But I think the overall trend. Remember, the whole point about Act 173 is to reduce the number of kids going through the evaluative process for special services, so that we can meet all kids' needs.
I know.
But when you get into the specific stuff around occupational therapy, that's a different thing. I can't speak to what the overall trends are going forward. But recent years definitely.
Well, I had a notice for this, and the notice is pretty simple. One of the things that I've been trying to champion and trying to encourage hell or high water is to get us at full capacity at sea, because the amount of monies that we would save on out-of-district loans could cover these things, and then it's quite a bit else besides that. But if we're going to be, 16, 17 kids downtown, what it costs us to have kids out of the district, because we can't find somebody there to, enhance a full loaded program, I think that's where we got to put our heaviest concentration. If we don't really
It's a
deal
people
with
issue.
173 all the way.
It's a people issue. My goodness, did we hustle to get folks. We just couldn't fill all those spots. This up in C, and then we still have those open 5 special ed positions now.
That's a primary target for me. I mean,
Yeah.
that's where we have the biggest monies. When I look at the warrants and I see what we're putting out, if you throw 17 kids or 19 kids out there and they're in the $40,000 to $50,000 range, that's no longer small chump change.
Right.
It makes
It's-
this very small.
It's a staffing issue, but it's also a space issue.
Well,
But we designed the building for this.
well, right. We've had conversations recently in the last couple of months around that probably one of the highest priorities should be expanding that program and doing an addition on that building, which, let me just say it again, leads into what I want to do, and let's make it all one.
Yeah, and also thinking about the future use of this
Yeah,
space. That could help with that.
Yeah. So yeah, for bang for our buck, that's definitely where we should be spending money.
Tech centers want to expand, but they can't expand it on their space, so they leave behind the space. But that's a 5-year approach.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, Nancy.
Which leads into the next one.
Yeah, which kind of piggybacks, right?
It's a big priority.
All right.
So that's 4 positions. And this would be at C. 4 new positions at C.
So the supports, those are I'm assuming behavioral interventionists, Lisa. I think that's where, in talking to
Right.
to Jason, along with 2 special educators, this would open up the door for one of our biggest needs, grade 7, 8 expansion of services.
This gets us up to the 60.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the point. Yeah, okay. You do that, you might make me happy.
It's just finding people.
Yep.
So
The ends of the earth.
Okay, so am I on the right page here?
Enrollment.
All right, enrollment information, Berrytown Middle, 815 students.
648 on the high school, we changed that. Does that include the,
That's funny.
The,
Okay.
remember the Spalding number was off.
yeah, 648.
648.
And that
Yes.
includes all the students, including C.
So in
that's
August,
it.
we were 777 and now they're up to 815 at Berrytown.
We were 803 at Berrytown,
Well, you've got.
including the outside placements.
Including outside. So does that include outside placements as well, Lisa? 815?
So.
Have to check.
I think so.
I
That's
bet
good
it
that the
does.
numbers and the grades are going up. Maybe we can have the high school part.
Yeah.
And they're at 799. Yeah, I would say,
July.
Right.
That's crazy.
I'm checking.
I would say you're right, Terry. I think it does include the outside.
Yeah, he's got a full chart on that, so he's cheating.
So between even just the two K through 8, we've brought in 20 kids since August. That's a whole other teacher.
Tried.
So how many kids do we have in early college play at this junction at the high school?
18?
16 in
16?
August 2022.
16.
Mhm.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Does that screw up our numbers for support
Yeah,
from the
does that-
state?
Does that affect our equalized people?
We're still counting if somebody asked us.
Lisa, did you understand the question?
That does include the outside placed, or did Terry already answer that? And I'm looking at,
Yeah,
No,
we
that's
were
fine.
asking if our well, what are they actually called? Early college kids, does that affect the equalized people?
yes, it does. Yeah.
I thought it did.
How is that
It
fair?
does.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we want them to get this
Right.
wonderful education, but we're gonna penalize them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we lose the whole student or is it?
No, I
just a-
think it's the percentage that the student is somewhere else.
Something I beat that legislature that.
That's your next mission there.
Right.
All right, grant funds. 6 million estimated.
So while we're
Was
just talking tonight, and our, work right now is on the general fund, I'm estimating approximately 6 million again, to be added to that total amount in grants.
That doesn't include the ESSER monies, does it?
Yes,
It does include that?
it does.
So we have $7 million going out on one school right now. That's for
HVAC.
what budget years? Is it for the budget year moving
So
forward?
that will be spanning over the next 3, because we're going to be spending some money in FY23, some in 24. And then the grant period of performance ends September 30, 2024. So that's a portion of that is in FY25, actually.
So I'm still a little thick on this one. We're right now spending on this building that we're sitting in right now, $7 million for sprinkler, HVAC and the electrical system. That, as I understand, that $7 million that we voted on is coming out of ESSER monies, am I correct?
That is correct.
Well, we're talking about $6 million in grant monies, which include the IDEA and all the other stuff. My question is the ESSER monies that we're spending on this part and above that 6 million?
They're included. So 7 million is what is going to be spent over the current year, FY24 and FY25.
So this project's going to take longer to complete.
Yes. This project is not going to be done all next year. We're starting it hopefully this year. We'll go through this summer. It will go into next year, and probably we will be finished. We have to be finished September
Okay.
30, 2024, which is actually in FY25.
I know the termination
So the-
points, I didn't know that. it
So
was
the 7 million is ESSER money and this is ESSER money.
Yes.
This
But
is
part of that 7 million is containing this expense of $6 million, is that correct?
Yes, a portion of the 7 million is included in that 6.
So the IDEA and the CFP monies, how much is that? Is that about 3.2, 3.1 million?
so IDEA typically is right around 800,000. And then CFP is about 2
2 million?
Say
million.
that again?
Yeah, sorry, it was somewhere near 3.
Oh, did you?
IDEA grant is typically around 800,000.
Hmm.
And then the CFP, those are your title grants, is usually right around 2,000, a little over.
2,000?
It doesn't.
I'm sorry, 2 million.
Okay, good.
Because that's
Yep.
basically
That's all right, I'm with you,
every
Lisa.
dollar we-
What time is it?
I don't know,
Yeah, doing good.
we're doing really good for a whole
Yeah.
budget. I know, I understand.
It varies. It's part of, it's part of that,
You get
part
some
of that
work.
6-7 million, but we're only taking a piece of it next year.
You wanna let this be?
All right.
All right, are we good with the grant funds?
Better now than
All right.
it was when I walked in.
Fiscal year 22, unaudited fund balances. Okay, general fund, 1.5 million, pending special education reimbursements. Tax stabilization, 1.6, less 700,000 towards current fiscal year budget, capital projects, 864, and food service, 771, which we've covered tonight.
Mhm.
Okay. Any questions?
So none of our current FY22 surplus is included in these numbers yet, correct?
Yes, this is our unaudited fund balances.
And is the 600,000 that we didn't use in FY22 in one of these numbers, Lisa? Does that reside here somewhere?
Yes. Yeah.
Which one does that sit in? That sits in the tax stabilization as well?
So it's sitting in the tax stabilization.
Okay, so there's 700 for this year, and then there's also another 600 that was from FY22 that we didn't use.
Right.
Okay. Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, special articles.
To be filled in at some point, right?
Yeah, I don't think we're in a position now to make any decisions on that.
Well, we're not, but do you, Chris or Lisa, have a sense of what you're thinking for special articles? Do you have an advocacy at this point, or is it too early? Too early.
I think that given that you have 700 in this current budget, you probably moving forward would want to use something very similar. So that would be my recommendation. And then I would also, given the fact that, there's been a lot of conversation around C, and the other, lighting projects and capital projects. So it would be my recommendation to put the rest of it, maybe 500,000 in tax stabilization and the remaining in capital projects.
Kind of split it in half.
Yeah, thirds.
Thirds?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, sorry.
See, I got 2 of those pages.
Yeah, you're actually,
Yeah, okay.
just you.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along. Funding for school Pearl. Yeah.
Yes.
Happened,
So I originally had hoped we could take this out of one of the ESSER grants. And so I've had a lot of back and forth with the agency from the get-go. We've been talking about this, and they've been sort of, you know, not, I wouldn't say stringing me along, but you know, I assumed they were gonna give us the okay for this, but they just they even said they reached out to the USD just to see if it was you know, doable. And then September 27th or whatever, 28th, they sent an email and said that it was not allowable. So using so there's 450,000 in indirect, and that funding can be used toward any type of general expenses. And I feel like this is a perfect place to spend at least the 88 to 90,000 of this implementation. I think that it's worth it. I think this, you know, is really going to bring us, you know, up to date when it comes to our financial management system. The reporting, you've seen some of the reports. We can't download our reports in Excel. It's really sloppy. So I just feel like, you know, also right now we're doing paper timesheets. So there's just so many advantages to this new system. In fact, you know, we really have been told that we have to move to something because they're phasing out the current system we have. So we don't really have a choice.
Okay, so the agency of education said they
Not
were
allowable.
not allowable. Okay, but you can still move ahead with what you want to do.
Using indirect, yes.
Right, and so
It's already processing.
I pulled up the this
Is that the quote we got?
the quote from Tyler. And are they still honoring the same
Yes.
price? Even though it's okay. All right. So all inclusive of costs of the one time is going to be, here it says 81,000.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then monthly, well, is it reoccurring? Is it going to be $12,000 a month, or is that?
No, that's annually, which is actually a little less than what we're paying now. So the annual license fee of $12,000 is an annual fee that I put in my budget.
Okay. And do you have, okay, I see what it put the breakdown. Okay, I'm good.
Lisa, we
Yeah.
had a discussion at our last board meeting, and it was based upon information that the Vermont School Boards Association was advocating. And one of the things they advocated was scrapping the existing accounting plan you had. But still, later on in their prologue, they talked about having a statewide program. And I was scratching my head on that, and it was one of my pages and pages of notes that I handed to Alice. I don't know if it ever got sent out to people, but anyways, it was something that
I think that
It's-
idea was scrapped a while ago, wasn't it?
Well, they put a pause on it. They haven't axed it
Yeah.
yet, and then what Chris probably knows this. My understanding is that there's enough feedback from folks in the state that it doesn't work very well, that they put a pause on it. And
Universal.
Yep, and they're saying, we're not sure, but they haven't said no, but they're not saying we're not sure, so.
So the genesis of my question, to be more specific, is what we have as was offered under a contract, is that sort of the same system that the Vermont School Boards Association says the legislature should probably latch onto or create? No, it's not.
So the system that we are migrating to is not the same failed system that the agency had originally said everybody, it was going to be mandatory.
No, what I was saying is that what we're gravitating to right now, is that something that the rest of the state's kind of gravitating to too as well? And
Yes,
what the
yes,
Vermont School Boards Association was getting behind? I think
yes.
yes.
And in fact, at VASBO last Friday, the CFO was giving an update on, so what happened was the legislature said they wanted the agency to work with business managers and to have this task forward. They also reached out to a consultant and they've done surveys. I actually completed a survey. And so I asked Bill Bates, the CFO at the agency, if those of us who were moving forward in our own direction and not going with e-finance, if that was an issue. And he said he couldn't give me any information, or he couldn't tell us what the decision was by the path forward, but he said you shouldn't worry about it. So
Now, what I'm advocating is that and I very much support that. After looking at it, reviewing it, it made perfect sense. I was just wondering if your other colleagues were moving to the same thing.
yes, others are moving toward migrating to this system. And again, it's because many of us have the same ADS Pro Fund system and it's being phased out. We don't have a choice.
Okay, thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Fuel update, I think we've covered that.
Yeah.
Lighting project financing update, Terry.
So that's just, so Lisa's got the financing all done. We hadn't, I think the last time we talked about it, we didn't have, this wasn't complete and we had ballpark numbers, but now we've got good numbers and everything, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're just going through the routine credit check type things, and I've submitted all of the information they've asked for. And we have a signed contract, so we're all set.
All the details soon. Good. Thank you.
All right, we're all set. Okay, other business. Items for future agenda.
I
The
think
budget.
what
Oh,
I suggested earlier, if we can get those pieces of information like the Manny and some of the other things to kind of just give us an ongoing analysis so we can have a chance to read and kind of.
Yeah.
have
So I
that.
could have Manny submit just in writing to the committee some of the details, and then late, whenever we can get them on a board agenda, do a general presentation. I think it'd be helpful, but you can get specific numbers about this stuff and
Yeah.
information about it
But
too, well before that.
It was well more than that. I'm talking about
Yeah.
a number of things we talked about tonight. If we can kind of get some written information, show some of the changes, where we're talking about eliminating more Paris slots that we're not filling and
Yeah.
how we can maneuver that. And that might give us a different number to look at, just so we're kind of moving this ahead. And then finally, I think the last thing I've looked at is there are some other things that we have yet to have discussed. Was minorly mentioned at the last board meeting, and that is we're dealing with this project that's going on here. I'm still a little worried about the $400,000 piece and how that genesis came about. Terry's been giving me information
I'm
on
on it.
panels and stuff. I mean, you are on it, and that's like,
Tuesday, 6 o'clock, be here.
and if we could get
No,
some
2:30 or 2.
two,
Oh,
yeah.
geez, thank you.
Did you told me 2:30?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I can look at
It's- I know it's Tuesday. Yeah.
So if we can have some of the other administrators that kind of talk about their budgets and some of the situations they're going in, it would make it more meaningful to know what their problems are and how we can relate to that.
So you want that for the November 2nd?
I would think the more information we get right now, the window's gonna get shorter and shorter and shorter, and eventually we're gonna dump this in the board's lap.
Okay,
That's where it's gonna have to be.
yeah, so that would be for item for future agenda.
So if they can sell it to us, we can sell it to them.
So I'm just gonna recap a little bit. Lisa, I'm gonna send you the questions that I have. If anybody has other questions that didn't get answered, send them to Lisa. I don't know if we want to coordinate so she doesn't get the same question
That would be
three
very helpful.
or four times. So let's coordinate. Michelle, thank you for sticking it out with us. I know it was probably a little boring, but if you have any questions, please coordinate with myself and Terry.
If it could be funneled into one source.
Yeah, send,
Terry, make a Google.
And I think the Google Doc would be okay for open meeting. I'm just trying to think.
well, if we're not,
having a conversation. It's just people putting their questions on
Yeah,
there.
and it's all
Consent, we should
public,
be
it's
okay.
all public info.
All right,
All
we'll
right.
figure that out.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping to develop a shared Google document that people could put their questions in. And then we can answer that. So it's, historical. We have the information that people can go to when they need to.
All right, so let's you and I talk about that, and then I will coordinate with everybody else. So we can
Andrea
get
has
those
a question, I
questions.
believe.
And for the next, so no other business items for future, let's just focus on the budget fiscal year
November 2nd.
24 and to see about getting the IT people. Is that what you want? The IT person, is it Manny?
You know,
Well, I think
Would you
we're
rather
gonna
have
talk
that at
about
the
at the
full
board
board
meeting,
level?
yeah.
That'd be for
At the board
meeting.
meeting,
yeah.
okay.
But we can get some more granular info before that for you guys.
Yeah.
And I just want to, I also, we're gonna have Josh Allen
Forget
join
your
us
job.
the second,
On the second,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, the
just
org
so we
chart.
can start talking about that listening session. Because that's gonna
Budget
come up quick.
communication.
Yeah.
That's gonna come up quick.
Well, it would be, and then we can talk to him about my pamphlet too.
Yeah.
book.
That's all part of it.
Okay.
That's all, that can all be part of the discussion. All the communication plan.
Yeah.
for the budget.
November 2nd?
Yeah.
November 2nd, 6 PM, right here. And also we'll have some admin. Is that what you?
Well, we've already had Spalding here.
Okay.
I can see if, I can see if we can have one of the Berry Town and Berry City.
Okay.
We could front end them too if we needed to make.
That would be
November 2nd.
Yep.
That would be helpful.
Andrea, sorry.
I just had a couple things. One, we had skipped over 6.1.1. Do I presume there won't be any discussion on that tonight? Because we didn't hop back to it.
That's the
We
line
just-
items.
That was kind of,
Well,
the-
that was the kind of, we kind of went into it a little bit, but
Yeah.
we didn't.
it was the line items that,
Right. I just didn't know if it got forgotten or if you had anything you wanted to discuss on it.
well, we
I'll stay and go
indirectly,
through it all if anybody wants to.
no. Hit upon it. It was the template. I was asking for this template to see and it was the line items. So,
Okay. And the other thing is not related to finance committee. It's related to the meeting for the lighting project. Because Chris, I'm full-time at Berrytown right now. And my students are in specials at 2, but they will be back around 2:15 for me to get them out the door. So unless someone can
We'll
cover.
record
for
the
me-
meeting.
Okay, so if you can record it, yeah, that would be
That's
great.
all virtual.
The vice
Terry
chair-
just
Chris,
volunteered.
I write lots of
volunteered to
notes,
be
so-
secretary.
We'll be.
Right.
Terry
Well, I
just
mean,
volunteered.
I'll cover it.
I can get it all from the video. That's fine. I just wanted to give you a heads up that I'm gonna be with my little darlings. So
Bless you for that, Andrea. Thank you. Seriously.
okay, and, all right, so November 2nd, and then, can I get a
So
motion?
moved.
Second,
Okay, adjourned. All in favor? Aye.
November 2nd,
Thanks,
right?
Lisa.
November
Sarah,
2nd,
Andrea.
6 p.m.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Good night.
I'll be in touch
Not
with you.
November.
Okay, good night.
Thank you, thank you.